Okay, I think we are live. Hello, world. It's Mr. FLIXTER, and I just love talking motion pictures. Tonight, I have special invited guest Danny Knightmare from Horror Addicts, and we're going to talk about our favorite horror movie survivors. How you doing tonight, Danny?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I'm a horror addict. 0 days sober because I watch a horror movie every day.
Yeah, same here. I'm pretty excited for tonight's show too. This is something that a lot of people talk about too, because a lot of people they know their favorite final girls and their favorite final boys. So, but a lot of times the final boys get overlooked. So that's why we're doing this episode. So we talk about both of them equally.
Yeah, I don't know. The Final Girls, I guess it just has a better ring to it, but yeah, it implies any gender, anything. Survivor.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, do you want to start things off?
Sure. Some of my first memories of watching movies when I was like about 4 or 5 years old was Friday the 13th Part 5. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and House 2. Those are like some of my oldest memories because we had the channels where you paid to get the pay-per-views. Like we had HBO and Showtime and all that stuff. So I got to see those as soon as they hit those premium channels on cable. We didn't have other cable. My mom somehow she like had illegal probably cable, but whatever. And she didn't supervise me much either. So I remember Freddie on the bus from Part 2. I remember Tommy Jarvis having the dream in the beginning where he still is Corey Feldman and then he gets stabbed and then, turns into a different guy. But
Yeah.
yeah, Tommy Jarvis is one of my favorite final people because he started
Good
off in
choice.
Part 4. I went back and kind of rewatched those later as soon as I got old enough to like figure out what Jason was and all about it. And throughout the franchise, I loved watching Part 4, 5, and 6 together because it was kind of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy.
Yeah.
And he represented kind of me, a little kid who loved horror. I mean, I didn't get to make masks and have like some computer programming thing, but still, I related to him because, yeah, he was peeping at the teenagers skinny dipping, and he knew how to fight Jason because he paid attention. He actually loved horror. So Tommy Jarvis is definitely one of my favorite final people.
That's a good choice too, because the Tommy Jarvis trilogy in itself really stands on its own when you look at the entire franchise. There's like what 12, 13 movies now, and for
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, including Freddy versus Jason. So I like the fact that he both takes him out as a kid and then he resurrects him as an adult, and just to take him out again. Like he faced left twice against Jason, and he's really good at facing his fears. And
Yeah.
he uses his cunning and he uses his intelligence too to kind of outsmart Jason. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great choice. Yeah, totally.
And he also survived Roy Burns and helped kind of take him down. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
On his spare time,
exactly.
like in between killing Jason and resurrecting Jason. So, and trapping Jason later on. He
He
trapped
both
him.
created the problem, and then he kind of solves it.
Yes. Uh, we had like this big concrete ditch where I was as a kid, and we'd pretend that the ditch, even though it was just a big open hole, we pretended it was a lake, and we had to like, one of us took turns being Jason. We had to like tie him down to the bottom of the concrete hole. This is the lake, Crystal Lake. When I
I
was just a
love
little
that.
kid.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been watching your wife's channel too, Glory B Movies. She does the Battle Royale, and she just covered the survivors recently. I think that was not the last show, but the one before that. I think last one was
Yeah,
Kaiju. Well, you're
Kaiju.
actually friends too, and following that. So it's fun to see you guys' take on different survivors. That's kind of what inspired me. I thought maybe we can do a whole show just talking about that, not like a battle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, just our
Just talk
favorite.
about the strengths, what makes them great. So since
Exactly.
we're talking about Friday the 13th, I want to mention Alice Hardy from the first one
Yeah, definitely.
because she survives Pamela Voorhees. She's the one that actually takes her out by decapitation. So she uses kind of like problem solving skills, kind of like survival skills because she's out in the woods by herself. Eventually, she's like the only one there, right?
Yeah.
So she's definitely one that I want to mention. I also want to mention Ginny from part two
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
she was the child psychologist and she actually uses her education against Jason. I thought that
She
was
does.
really clever. She like gets in his head. It almost works. It doesn't quite work out the way she planned it, but it almost works. My cat's bugging me. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even though it didn't like work out for her perfectly, I mean, she just kicked him in the balls. So I mean,
And I
Jenny
think she's the
Rock.
one who uses the chainsaw on Jason too. Like she
Yeah,
really like attacks him.
she goes after him. The ending is kind of weird because of the whole stuff they had with Gillette and Dash and everything, and he just where he comes in with the long hair and he breaks through, and then ends up being kind of like a dream or something. But other than that, Ginny was great. Like even though she's scared and she's vulnerable. I mean, she even pisses herself at one point, but she still like stands up to him. Like I said, you brought up with a chainsaw. She kicks him in the nuts. She puts on the sweater and tries to confuse him. That's a tactic you even use in the video game that came out a couple of years ago. So it's all pretty cool. Ginny was actually really awesome. I actually was kind of sad in the third movie that we didn't get the original plan of like Ginny in the mental hospital, and then Jason was going to go after her there. Now, in a Jason aspect, maybe that was for the best because it would have been weird for Jason to do that kind of stuff. But at this point, we hadn't really established Jason. But I think Ginny should have had more. Definitely would have liked more with Ginny.
I agree. I feel the same way about Alice too. The first time I saw Friday the 13th Part 2, I was shocked. I couldn't believe what they did, like right in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I thought you got kind of a raw deal there, so I was kind of disappointed. But I was happy. But by the end of that movie, because Ginny was a pretty good final girl.
Yeah. Alice was great. Actually, I'm drawing a blank on the actress's name.
Alice was played by Adrienne King.
Yeah, Adrienne King. I actually met her, and I had her watch my Friday the 13th A, this like little short movie that's a spoof like of a Canadian Jason, where he's really polite and tells you like, "Hey, please take off, or I'll have to come back here and hack you up." And like they just keep partying, so he comes back and he's like, "Well, sorry to do this, but then he just starts chopping them up. And I showed it to her, and she just laughed the whole time. She told me that she doesn't believe the beginning of Part 2 is really her dying. She thinks it's a dream sequence as far as she's concerned, because how did Jason find her in the city, like prank phone call her and then kill her and take off her T-Cat and all that stuff and then make his way back? I have a funny like joke that I've done like on my show too, where we show that Jason went off to go do that, and then on his way back, he stopped in Texarkana, where he got in a big mess there, and he was the town that dreaded sundown killer because that also had a bag on his head. On his way back to Crystal Lake.
That's hilarious. Let's just catch up with the chat real quick. Let's see. Oh, I'm falling behind.
Oh, wow.
Maverick Media says, "Hey, Mr. FLIXTER. Hey, Danny."
What's up, Maverick Media?
Hi, Maverick Media. She also says, "Hi, Denisha."
Denisha, how you doing? Oh, that's my wife.
We have 6 people here. That's pretty cool. Oh, Gory is here. Wow. Hi, Gory.
Oh, Half Cheetah's here.
Oh, hi, Cheetah.
Cool.
Let's see. That's pretty much it. Everyone's just saying hello. Everyone's saying hello. Hello, Gory. Hello, Cheetah. Welcome, welcome. We got 6 people so far. Happy to have you guys here. This is very exciting. Speaking of Friday the 13th, I just want to talk about Chris real quick for Part 3.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because it's my name too, but because she literally leaves her mark on the franchise, because she leaves that notch in the mask, and that notch remains there throughout the whole way. Even when he gets a different mask, for some reason the notch is still there. But hey, whatever. Right? There's a lot about Friday the 13th that doesn't really make sense, but you just have to kind of go with it, because each movie does kind of stand on its own. But Part 3 was the personal favorite for me, because that's when he gets his mask. And that's the whole thing with the bikers in the bar. And I thought that was pretty cool, how he takes them out one by one. But Chris, you go through this whole traumatic experience. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, Fox, because from the bikers and stuff, and Shelly.
It has some of the most creative kills, in my opinion, too. And Shelly was one of my favorite characters, but he didn't survive, unfortunately. I was very sad about that, because he was like the jokester, the prankster. I'm the kind of guy that's like that, too. I like to pull funny stuff from my friends sometimes.
He becomes a little bit of a whiny, nice guy right before he dies. But other than that, he was great. Like the stuff at the bar was funny. The fact that he's got all the pranks and that he gives Jason the mask. So he was a very important character.
Oh, yeah. Probably one of the more important ones. Same with Chris, too, because she goes through like this backstory of she was there before or something like that. And she faced Jason once and she came back and she faced off against him again and she survived Part 3. So I think she deserves credit for that.
And then like her boyfriend named Rick or something. He's wearing, for some reason, a Pamela Voorhees sweater. He deserves to have his eye popped out, man. Like, why was he doing that?
I'll never understand that. No, that's just weird. Another one that I want to mention, my personal favorite, I have to go with Andy Barclay from Child's Play. I don't know if you can see it, but I got my Andy shirt on.
Andy, it's time to play hide. I love Andy. Once again, I started watching horror at a very young age. So, Freddy and both Jason, as much as I loved them, they went after teenagers. I was a little kid, so I felt pretty safe watching those. Chucky was going after Andy, so I was actually a little more worried about that. Plus, my sister later on had a talking doll. It wasn't Chucky, but it was this tall girl talking, and it was creepy. I know it even creeped her out because I showed her Child's Play, and then like she'd throw it in her closet and bury it with other toys. But then I'd go while she's sleeping, dig it out and put it next to her, so she'd wake up with it and scream. But yeah, Andy was great. He's a character I very much related to, just being a young kid watching it at the time. And yeah, Chucky, he was actually pretty unnerving. He was funny, but he was scary because he was more of a threat to kids, if not just people, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And personally, I've always had a close connection with the character of Andy because the movie Child's Play takes place on and around my birthday. We even share the same birthday. Like,
oh, wow.
The character and I, it's November 9th. If you pay attention to the movie, like I think Chelsea Ray dies on the 9th or something like that, and then it takes place on like the 10th and the 11th. So not many movies that take place on and around my birthday. So I always thought that was kind of cool. Like the two of us kind of shared the same day. And not only does he survive 2 movies in the beginning, but then he goes to military school and gets all this gun training and stuff like that. And then he comes back later on at the end of Curse, and then he finally gets sort of gets his revenge in Cult of Chucky, because he goes back to the fan file and he faces off like one-on-one. And then another one, Kyle actually comes back too, and I was so happy because ever since part 2, she's another final girl that I want to mention because I think she's very underrated. Even though she's only in like the one film and she's in the series a little bit, I'm still waiting to see more from her. But both of them, like
yeah, Kyle was great too. I loved part 2. In fact, it might not be the most like gory or messed up kill, but my favorite kill that probably has always stuck with me is How's It Hanging Phil, when he kills Andy's foster dad and Kyle's foster dad. I don't know. I just loved how he phrased it. And Kyle was just amazing. I'm glad that she's back. My wife actually interviewed her and Fiona Dorff real recently at Crypticon, so that was cool. And she's just a great person. I'm glad that both her and Andy are back in the series. You freeze up? We'll wait. But yeah. Always dug Andy. He was a cool kid. He was a cool... I didn't quite get how they like convinced people to think the real bullets were paintball bullets, because that's... I don't really know how that science worked, but I still like part 3, especially in the haunted house at the end. Hey, this is me hosting the Mr. FLIXTER show for a time being. I think he's just fixing his camera. Let's see what's the chats. Oh, we got... Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Something happened with the internet there.
It's all right.
All right, back to the chats real quick. Try to catch up. Jam. Denisha Lane says, hope everyone is ready for Chucky season 2. I'm very excited for that. I was very surprised with Chucky season 1 because you never know how a TV show is going to go. I was very disappointed with the Scream TV show. And I've heard bad things about Friday the 13th. I never actually watched that show, though. But you know what I mean? Like, sometimes horror movies don't always translate well into shows.
Well, Friday the 13th, it had nothing to do with Jason. It was like they were finding these haunted artifacts. They were going to actually at one point find his mask, but they never got that far into the series before it was canceled. So, maybe. And then Freddy's Nightmares, like, the first 2 episodes are like kind of a prequel about him, but then after that, it's just kind of other stuff.
Yeah, but I really like how, because a lot of problems with prequels is they tend to answer questions that nobody really cares about. But with the Chucky show, I thought it was cool. It went into like, who was Charles Lee Ray's first kill? How did he meet Tiffany? Exactly. All this other stuff that I've wondered about that they never touched on in the movies. So I'm really excited with what they're going to do with season 2.
I loved how Fiona Dorff played her dad.
Speaking of that, Gory says, Andy's great, and also Nika. I wanted to mention her, too, because even though she does get possessed eventually, she does survive in Curse of Chucky, and she's the only paraplegic to go against Chucky, and she kind of uses that against him, because he tries to stab her in the leg, and she's like, what are you doing?
Granted, now she's more than just paraplegic. She's missing all of her limbs. Like, they took her limbs from her, so... She's still alive, though. She hasn't died.
And she goes through so much in Cult of Chucky. Like, the whole thing's about, like, what's going on and if it's real or if it isn't real. And I thought that was such a great setting because you have all these different Chucky dolls. And you're like, wait a minute. which one's alive? And then you find out they're all alive. Oh my god.
Somehow managed to make copies of his soul. So it's like it's crazy. I don't know where the show's gonna like go, but I'm looking forward to it.
That's what I mean. Like, what's gonna happen? Is they gonna make an army of Chucky dolls and Tiffany dolls?
I'm not a monster.
Next, I want to talk about Sally from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She's like one of the original final girls,
She
and
is
I'd
kind
be
of
really remiss if we didn't talk about her.
yeah, she kind of like set that standard where like all of the friends are kind of killed off one by one, and like she goes through hell and back, but manages to escape. And it kind of that's what they've kind of copied and pasted ever since with like tweaks here and there. Sally though, she's not stable by the end of that. Like even the new movie, they kind of make her like this Texas Ranger, but I don't know if she'd really be like that after that first movie. I think she'd probably be messed up and probably not live anywhere near Texas, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, Sally, she's a fighter. I mean, she didn't go down. She throws herself through windows. She just fights and bites and kicks and screams and gets the hell out of there. And
Yeah,
she does what she has to survive. Though I
and
think
that one's
it took a hell of a toll on her, though.
oh, for sure. And that movie's interesting too, because all our friends end up dying like halfway through it. And then you're like, wait a minute, where's the movie going to go from there? Then you see this dinner party that obviously inspired House of a Thousand Corpses and a bunch of other movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is just her. Like, you're like, how is she going to get out of this? And she uses her tenacity, she uses the cleverness, she uses intuition, she uses all these different like attributes, and she gets out barely, but she gets out, and it's amazing. That final scene is just so iconic when Leatherface is dancing around with his chainsaw. I thought that was so cool. What a way to end the film. And then she's just like screaming.
It was like between him dancing and her screaming, it was just like this feral display of just they both of like have very little humanity and they're just freaking out and just crying out into the universe, you know? It's great.
Yeah. I was really disappointed with the new Texas Chainsaw, though. I don't know if you saw it, but I had a video with Movie The Munchies, and we talked about our worst movies of the year so far, and that one made my list because I didn't like how they treated the character. I thought it was very disrespectful, and the way they just killed her off very unceremoniously. Like, what was the point of bringing her back if you're just going to do that? You know what I mean? Like, they didn't really do justice to the character.
There's parts of that movie I do like, but not with her at all. Like they did not need her at any moment in time. Like that was just to cash in on the whole Halloween Kills Laurie Strode type thing. That's all that was. They're going for the 2018 Halloween where they just wanted to bring her back as some like badass out to hunt him. And it's like, I don't think that's how Sally would have ended up. Like it just, and since the original actress is gone and Toby Hooper's gone and stuff, it's like, why do that? That's like not your character. I thought it was disrespectful as well. Just a cash in.
Yeah. If you're gonna recast her, like that takes away the whole nostalgia thing. Because like the whole point of having Laurie in those movies was because she was there from the beginning. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the cool thing about Neve Campbell. She keeps showing up in the Scream films. Exactly. I know there's rumors that she might not be in 6, but we'll get to Neve Campbell soon.
Exactly. But not just Sally though. I love in part 2. I love Stretch. Like Stretch is just a badass pair. Like Caroline Williams. She's so cool. She like doesn't quite break her the way it broke Sally in that part 2. I think she kind of manipulates Leatherface. I mean, he's very going through a hormonal phase of his life apparently, but she like uses that to kind of to her advantage and holds her own in a movie where, you know, Dennis Hopper's in there wielding chainsaws, and still Carolina Williams as Stretch manages to be very remarkable and memorable. So.
I agree with that. Real quick, Half Cheetah says, I think Sally was driven crazy. I agree with that.
So do I. I don't think she'd go anywhere near Texas.
Which means she'd be a perfect FBI agent. She'd probably be like a Sydney and get out of Woodsboro.
Sally moves to Haddonfield just to get away from it because she's like that. And then like Laurie, to get away from it, moves to Texas. It's
yeah, exactly. Corey says it wasn't their character to bring back. I agree with that. Mavic Media says Sally was literally treated like a piece of trash. I agree with that. Gory loves Stretch too. Yeah, you guys mentioned her in the Survivors because she's very resourceful. She uses her surroundings a lot, and not many final girls do that. Gory says, give these guys a thumbs up. Thank you, Gory. Yeah, make sure you guys like and subscribe to both of our channels. We'll drop our socials later on. Let's see, check my notes real quick. Next, I want to talk about Hooper and Brody from Jaws. I talked about the original Final Girl. These are pretty much the original Final Boys because they're like the only ones that survive the shark attack when it comes down to it. And they use like their skills of like the sea and their skills with like boating and their skills with like firearms too, if you think about it, to take out this giant shark that's just causing all this terror.
Well, one's like a sheriff who really doesn't want to be in the water, and the other one's a marine biologist, but they make it work. In the book, it seems like they had a love triangle with Sheriff Brody's wife, but they cut that out for the movie, and I think that's fine. They didn't need that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. I haven't read the book before.
But I love Jaws. I saw it in the theaters again last summer. I took my kid to it, and he'd seen it before, but it was the first time we all saw it in the theaters, and he had a friend who'd never seen it before, and they kept jumping, and they were like, whoa. So I'm just glad that it still has that great effect. It holds up. Yeah, they survive it, and I love that part where they're just kind of like, doggy paddling with the pieces of the boat back to the shore, and which itself is a pretty dangerous thing that you can't guarantee you'll survive, but compared to the shit that they just went through.
Yeah, exactly. They were played by Roy Schneider and Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah, Dreyfuss especially. I love Dreyfuss in a lot of things. I love him in What About Bob? He's hilarious. But it's just good to like kind of see him in like this role that when he was younger and it was more serious. But he still is kind of a funny guy. Like just his delivery is pretty funny in that movie, which is good because there's a lot of tension. So it's cool that it breaks it.
Yeah. This movie scared the hell out of me when I was a kid because I used to live in California, so I would swim in the ocean a lot growing up. So like, yeah, after I saw that, I stayed out of the water for the longest time, and not that many movies have had that effect on me. So just the fact that, and like you said, with your kid and his friend and stuff like that, the fact that it still has that same effect, like 30, 40 years later, that says a lot about the filmmaking and the writing and just everything about this movie. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's just like it gave me an irrational fear as a child, like even giant pools and lakes and stuff that I know there's not a giant shark in there, but it's just I don't know.
Exactly. Just want to stay out of the
Why
water.
would there be one? But it doesn't make any sense. But it made me always think that, because yeah, that once again, that movie has the balls to kill a kid. So I'm like, oh, yeah, sharks aren't like Jason and Freddy going after teenagers. They're going after anything that's swimming around,
I really appreciate when movies have the balls to do that too when they go for kids. That's why I like the It movies so much, especially the newer ones, because it actually goes there and it shows, especially like in the beginning, Georgie. And actually, that's the next one I want to talk about. I want to talk about the Losers Club, more specifically Beverly, because they both face off against Pennyface when they're kids, and then they come back and they're adults and they face off against them again. But not only that, Beverly has to put up with like an abusive father growing up, and then when she's an adult, she has to go against an abusive husband. So she has a lot of baggage, and then to go into this fight and go against Pennywise, like that takes a lot. You know what I mean? Like she has a lot of perseverance. She has a lot of courage for that. Like very admirable in my opinion. I don't think Beverly gets enough credit.
I worry about you, Beverly. I'm glad they left out the train because I don't need that part in the book. That part shouldn't even be in the book, let alone in any of the movies. But yeah, Beverly is a great character otherwise, and I just feel bad for her because yeah, she's going through so much abuse, and like my heart always went out for her, even though like the adult version, like I look back and I kind of laugh now, but I still love that movie. But she's like, why does he have to be so mean as an adult? But as the kids, like, yeah, she was the slingshot. She was the badass, actually. She was kind of the muscle in the sense of the group of these boys. So I really liked that. And I liked that it was complicated because like Ben really wanted her and like all this other stuff. It was just like of who liked who and all that stuff. It was actually pretty realistic. And I kind of, as a kid, it was nice to, I don't know, see stuff that was more gray than just black and white with all these characters.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the books and especially the newer movies. They really capture what it's like to be a kid. So I don't know about you, but when I was 12 years old, I was swearing like a sailor, talking all this trash and stuff like that. Kind of like the kids in South Park. Like that's just the way kids are, and I'm glad that they show more realistic depictions of it. And I really appreciate Beverly's strength too, because it takes a lot of strength to put up with all this stuff. And plus the bullies. I didn't even mention that she gets bullied a lot by the other girls too. So there's just a lot going on with her, but she's kind of the leader of the group, in my opinion. Like I know there's the other guys, but really she's the one that's like that shining, like the beacon of hope almost.
She's the one
who she gets captured. That's the one really bands all the guys together toward the end.
Yeah, and then the new one, she actually saw the deadlights and survived, so she should be the light, and that's kind of like why she should be like, and it's better than the train. Like I said, I'd rather see the lights into that, and bring them together that way. I like Beverly. I liked Eddie a little bit, especially.
Eddie's hilarious. The hypochondriac.
Yeah, it was funny. There's some CGI in the new movies that I wasn't a big fan of, but overall, I thought the story was great. The kids were awesome. They were a lot like how I was because it takes place in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s/90s, early 90s. So, yeah, I really could relate to that. It kind of like was nostalgic for me because one, it was a book I grew up on and a movie I grew up on, a miniseries. But then, so going back on that was nostalgia, but also just the fact that they changed it so they were, instead of kids in the 50s and adults in the 80s, they were kids in the 80s and adults now. That actually, resonated with me really well because that's kind of my life there. So
Yeah, exactly. I thought they were really well done. I have a few complaints about the second one. Like it ran a little long, and I thought they should have stuck with the original ending in the book because I thought that kind of tied things up a little better and explains things a little better. Because if you don't know the story, then you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, why did he even like lie to the group if it didn't work the first time? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's an odd plot line, odd writing choice, but a good movie, and they're a good group of survivors too. So I think they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, definitely. The Loser Club is definitely same thing for me. Growing up, was the Monster Squad.
Oh yeah,
I loved the Monster Squad as a kid. They took on the Universal monsters with their horror knowledge, and they were always getting in trouble at school because they were drawing monsters and stuff. Same thing. I drew monsters all the time. I doodled on all my homework. Like I just randomly draw Godzilla crushing stuff, but I still do it as long as it was right. But the teacher would still be like concerned.
sit here. That's funny. I used to get in trouble because I used to write stories a lot for like my assignments, but they were always like slasher stories, and they never had happy endings. So my teacher sat me down a few times. She's like, "What's going on with you? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just like horror. Like, I'm just imaginative. Like, I'm not gonna go like kill people. Like, real quick,
Yeah.
Hatch with a Real View says, "People are food, not friends." And then Gory says, people.
You
She
are
says,
who you eat.
she also says, "The one train I'm not gonna get on." Yeah, really.
Yeah.
She just says, "Zoinks." Which train was worse, the one in It or the one in Human Centipede? Oh,
Yeah, because little kids.
Oh yeah.
Gross
Oh
as
yeah.
Human Centipede is, it's not little kids. So
Yeah. When it's kids, it's like a whole different like level. You know what I mean? It's like cringe, very cringe.
I mean, both are very. Yeah, I don't want to be a part of either of those.
Denisha Lane agrees. I'm with you on the train.
Yeah,
I think we can all agree on that. That's
I
pretty
think
funny.
Stephen King would get more trouble nowadays if he wrote that. So, but I know he was he did a lot of cocaine back in the day, so he probably doesn't even remember.
Like Cujo, yeah.
He doesn't remember Cujo at all, so I don't think he really remembers writing like 11 pages of graphic children's sex. I always thought it was funny because in the miniseries they talk about how because Eddie he grows up and then he dies a virgin, but in the book he did have like a big old fat wife like his big old fat mama. So I thought that was weird. Plus in the book he technically was first to lose his virginity other than Beverly. Like they did it at the same time. I was like, but whatever. Anyways, giant claymation scorpion spider. It was cool, right?
Yeah. I thought it was funny too how in the newer ones they got the same person that played his mom to play his wife in the second one. That was a nice touch.
I like that a little better. I thought that was better with that. Speaking with kids though, since we're going with that, I want to mention Charlie from Critters. I liked him a lot, and he was great in Critters 1, 2, and 3. And then 3 survives alongside Josh, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in his first movie appearance.
Oh, I forgot about that. Was that his first movie? Wow.
His first, I think, full-length movie. I mean, I'm sure he did some acting stuff before that. I could be even wrong. It might not be his first movie, but I think it is. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
he wishes his dad dead because his dad's a dick. And then, like, when he comes home and, like, the critters are all eating his dad, like, so he gets his wish. But yeah, I liked Charlie a lot. I liked him in the first 2 Critters movies, and I liked him in the third one as well. So he was a kid that I kind of related to. Just throwing him out there as well. And Critters was like, rated R Gremlins. So good times.
I think that movie's really underrated too, like the whole franchise actually, because it tends to get overlooked because people tend to compare it to Gremlins, and that's not really fair because
No,
even though they came out like around the same time, they're not similar like at all. Like the critters are aliens, for example, and the
exactly.
Gremlins, as far as we know, are from Earth, I guess, but
Yeah,
there's no hints of space or anything like that in either of the Gremlins movies. So
I think
and
they're
there's no two
magical.
Gremlins movies. There's
Yeah.
so many more critters movies, like they just keep making them.
Plus, they had
And
a short run series on Shutter, like a TV series, and yeah, I think there's
yeah,
5 movies altogether.
yeah. There's one on Netflix that came out in like 2017 or 2018 or something. Like it was pretty recent. It was called
Yeah,
Critters Attack or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm glad they keep doing it and they keep trying to do their own thing and they really try to separate themselves from Gremlins because
mhm.
it's like apples to oranges. Like they're not even close to similar at all.
Yeah. As
Except for the
Raphael
fact
said,
that they're
"Comes
furry
up
and
with
Gremlins are
stuff,
scaly.
huh?" I remember just seeing. I've seen the critters like boxes at the VHS store, but I didn't like get a chance to rent them yet. But I remember as soon as I saw Turtles in the theater, when Raphael comes out of the theater, he's like, "Who comes up with this stuff?" Huh? And his critters poster behind him. I'm like, "Okay, I gotta see this movie." Like, so I begged and I begged, and I got someone to like rent it for me. And I was like,
That's awesome.
I loved it. Like you said, it's not they get compared to Gremlins, and I think that maybe they got the go ahead because Gremlins came out. But from what I understand, Critters was written before Gremlins came out. I think it just might have got the green light because the studio might have wanted to cash in on it or something.
I've heard that too. I heard that Critters was actually conceived before it came out, and then because of the success, like that's why they kind of pushed it a little bit more. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that it took the way that it did, and they keep making them. It's kind of like Tremors. Every few years, you just see a new one pop up. You're like, oh hey, that's cool.
Exactly. And when they
Real
went to
quick,
space, it made sense because they were aliens.
exactly. Cal L Daly says, "Hello, people. Cheetah recommended, so I thought I'd check it out. Thanks for joining us, Cal L Daly."
Oh, nice. Zigma's in the chat. That's my
Oh,
brother-in-law.
Sigma, that's
That's
cool.
Gory's brother. Sup,
It's good to see you here,
Zigma?
Sigma. I need something to watch while I sit here in the bathroom. Oh, thanks, Sigma. Let's see. Keller Daly says, I prefer the original over the remake. I like the cast and the chemistry a lot better than the. Oh, I think she's talking about it.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I think I prefer the original too, but that's more the nostalgia thing. And Tim Curry is Pennywise. Like, come on, you
Oh
can't
yeah.
really beat that. It's
I
just
feel
you can't compare the two performances. They're just so different.
exactly. Skarsgård went with more of an actual like feral kind of beast with it, and I think that was great. He's really just savoring and hungry because he's a starving alien thing that came to Earth a long time ago. But Curry just like he stole the show. He's what made that miniseries. Like the kids all did great in both the versions, but then like the adults in the miniseries, as much as I like some of those actors, it was Tim Curry. Tim Curry was like the reason why you kept watching. He was just insane, and I love Tim Curry. He's great, and especially as Pennywise.
He's so charismatic in everything he does, eh?
Yeah, he just steals it.
Oh, for sure. Speaking of alien movies, we can't talk about Survivors without talking about Childs and McCready from The Thing.
Oh yeah,
Because
definitely.
they don't use brute strength, they use science and they use their minds to try to outsmart this creature. Because we never actually see what the thing actually looks like, and that's part of the scariest thing about that movie because you just don't know. Like it could be anything, it could be anywhere, it could be anybody. Like this movie's so creepy on so many levels because you're isolated, you're out there in the middle of nowhere,
Oh yeah,
so there's no escape. Like even if you got away, like where are you gonna go? Like there's miles of just wilderness everywhere. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
and these
And
two
the
guys especially, they were the smarter ones of the group. Like they had like their own like personal morals and their own like little guidelines that they followed, and they did whatever they could. Like they made sure they quarantined the people when they found out they were infected. They made sure that they took the steps and they took basic precautions, and they spent a lot of time with those science experiments. And I really like the one scene when he touches it and it just kind of
yeah, the
explodes all over
blood
the place.
takes the
Yeah, the blood.
hot burns the iron or the copper, and he like just burning the blood to see if it reacts. I love that. It's just one of the best movies. It's probably the best remake of all time, honestly. The original, it was like this man, but he was like a vegetable technically, and that scared my grandpa like a lot. He said he had nightmares because he saw him on fire, and just seeing a person on fire like that, it was like a great stunt for a movie of its time. But
Yeah.
yeah, the remake, like I saw that as a kid too, and I'm just like, what is this? This is fucking awesome. When they're like doing the fucking clear and a rib cage opens up and bites
Stomach
the guy's
open.
hands off, and it's like the epitome of practical effects. Like I don't think any movie has done practical effects better than that. And that's why I was so sad when they like did the prequel remake thing and they just used all CGI. And I was just like,
Yeah, that was so disheartening because the practical effects from the first one are amazing, especially like the head with the spider legs. They even touched on that in It, like this little reference that they do. And they
yeah.
have the quote, they're like, "You got to be kidding me." And
And
then the way that skirted around and stuff like that, it's so cool. That's taking back to like the movie magic. I say this all the time on my channel, but I really miss that movie magic when you watch different scenes and you're like, how did they do that? Because now it's all just soulless, it's CGI. You just kind of write it off. You're like, oh, well, that looks crappy.
And I'm not totally against CGI. Like the original Jurassic Park is perfect, where they used both. They used practical puppets and all this stuff, but then they just kind of filled it in with the CGI where they needed to. And I love that use of CGI. I think it did change movies for the better overall, but it's just movies that have this cheap, bad CGI and they rely on it completely. It's just like, I'd rather you have a bad practical effect or rather a bad puppet. I don't care if it's stupid looking. I'd rather there be a real puppet than bad, cheap CGI. It's just, it irks me so bad.
That's what I like about the Chucky movies, especially because they use puppetry pretty much throughout the whole franchise. Even the show, like they didn't just rely on CGI. They wanted to make it like more true to like what the original was based on, anyways. Like the foundation of how important like practical effects can be. Like I think they even got little people to dress up in the costumes for like those far away shots. Kind of like what they do with like Star Wars and like the droids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really good the way that they use the practical effects in that. And then this new, I think it was 2011. Like it's not that much new anymore. But yeah, it was very disappointing. And then you find out that it's actually like a sequel. So I don't know. I thought they kind of tried too hard, and they should have got John Carpenter. I'm glad you mentioned that it's a remake. Not many people know that. They think that like it's just like an 80s movie, you know, like it's just another science fiction movie, but no, it's a remake.
Yeah,
it's one
of from outer space or from another world or whatever. I don't remember, but it was, I like it. And that's in fact in John Carpenter's Halloween, that's what they're watching because he wanted to remake it.
yeah, exactly. Sigma says, not really a horror fan, just a big supporter of horror addicts and Corey. Well, thank you for your support. Kyle also, there's more of an action sci-fi in that movie. It's got a lot of suspense, though.
Speaking of which, though, I think we should jump into Lieutenant Ellen Ripley because she is like a badass final girl. Before even final girls were completely established, but the original Alien plays out like a slasher movie, and that category hadn't been like established yet. It was just getting established with Halloween, like right before it. But then, we have Alien, and it's in space. People get picked off one by one. If they would have just listened to Ripley, because she was like, no, let's quarantine this guy. Like, we don't know what's wrong with him. Like, we shouldn't let him in. Like, if everybody listened to her in both the first two movies, they'd be shorter movies because she's like, we got to quarantine this guy. And then the second movie, she's like, we should just nuke him from orbit. And if they would have just listened to both of those cases, Ellen Ripley would have made it a lot shorter. So people should listen to Ellen Ripley. But yeah, I loved Ellen Ripley. Even as a kid, I was like, this chick's cool. She's awesome. She's badass. She's like, even the weird android dude, he's covered in milk and he's like trying to shove a magazine down her throat, but she fights him off. And like, and she, not only does she save herself in the first movie, but she saves her cat. And she goes through a big ordeal to go get her cat to do it too. And then she does the same thing in the second movie for Newt, the little girl. Like, it's like, she is a badass, especially when she's got a flamethrower in her hand or she's working one of those like forklift suits. But
those nice suits, yep.
Ellen Ripley is a total great survivor badass. And later on, she comes back, like, even in the third movie, she's cool and she sacrifices herself, holds herself in alone, like with all these prisoners that are pretty gross and rapey, but she manages to hold her own and helps them kill the alien. She sacrifices herself to kill the alien, but then comes back as a clone, and she's like now part alien. But I don't know.
It gets weird for a while, yeah.
It does, but either way, I loved Ellen Ripley, especially in the first two movies. Like, she was a great survivor.
I love the fact that it's like a male-dominant crew, but she totally takes charge and takes control of the whole situation. After a while, she's like, no, we're going to do this my way. And she is probably like one of the most iconic lines in a horror movie. Get away from her, you bitch!
Exactly.
When she's facing off against the queen or whatever. I think that's the second one.
Yeah.
She saved the little girl, too.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, she saves the cat in the first one, saves the little girl in the second one. She's a badass. And
totally.
a total final girl like standard of like set high. Even though it is sci-fi, I don't care. That first one especially is definitely a horror movie. The second one maybe a bit of an action horror sci-fi, but so what? It's still badass. She's still
It's
cool.
more actiony as it goes along, especially when you get to like Resurrection and after that. And don't get me started on Prometheus. Oh, I hate
Oh,
that movie so much. We don't talk about Prometheus on this channel.
as you said earlier, answering questions we didn't want answers to.
Exactly. So talking about Alien, I want to talk about Dutch from Predator, Arnold
Oh,
Schwarzenegger character from the first
yeah,
one, because he
exactly.
uses his survival tactics, he uses his military training, and he uses common sense, which you don't see too much. Like he figures out since it's the vision for the Predator is heat based, he covers himself in the mud, for example. You know what I mean? Like he uses a lot of guerrilla warfare tactics too. He uses the Predator's strengths against him,
Exactly.
and he ends up getting the upper hand.
The most thing he uses against him is his pride. Like at one point, the Predator picks him up and could just kill him, but it's playing with him, and then like all the traps go off. It's really great. I love that. Like all those traps, especially. Schwarzenegger is just a badass. I mean, it was a good movie to begin with. Did you know that originally Predator was gonna be a Rocky movie? Like
Oh,
they wrote it kind of as a joke, but they wrote a straight up screenplay where Rocky was going to box an alien. Like that was what Rocky 5 was originally going to be before it got changed to Tommy Gunn, where he beat the Russians, right? And USA, but now he's going to beat an alien and it'll be Earth. But Stallone completely shot that down. So they're like, okay, well, what if we tweak it for Rambo? And like, okay, he fights him in the jungle. And he thought about it, and they were really actually going to do it for a while there. But then he once again said, nah, I don't want Rambo fighting an alien either. So then they're like, well, let's just take Rambo out of it, still have a guy fight him in the jungle, and we'll see if Arnold's interested in doing it then. And so Arnold's like, yeah, I'll do it. And he was getting married. But they first filmed it with Jean-Claude Van Damme in like a Beetleborg suit. Like he looked like this giant beetle, but they like that looks awful. So they told Arnold to go get married and have his honeymoon, but then they'll like soon as he comes back, they'll have a brand new alien to finish the last half of the movie with. And yeah, they got what's his name who helped, not the guy who created what the xenomorph looked like, but helped make what the xenomorphs. He was working on Alien, and he's like, well, you know, xenomorphs are very phallic, so I'll go very vagina, like with this guy's mouth.
yeah, exactly. And he's got another iconic line too when the Predator first takes his mask off, and he's like, "What the hell are you?" I thought that was so cool the way he like says that.
And speaking of which, I think it might be underrated. I love Predator 2. So Danny Glover is Officer Michael Harrigan. Michael,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. I think he was great. Yeah, do I think he's the big alpha of all of LA? No, but whatever. I like that movie. I thought he was great.
Okay.
I love and just recently I just watched Prey and Nura. She's the final girl in that, and she's badass. I fucking
I haven't
actually did
seen
like
Prey
Prey.
yet, but I'm looking forward to it. It does look pretty cool. I do have Disney Plus. It's just a matter of finding time to watch it. But yeah,
It
that's what
does
I'm looking forward to.
it does tie into Predator 2, because you know how Michael gets
Oh,
that old colonial pistol.
yeah.
So it'll kind of explain how he gets that pistol. It's the same
Oh,
gun.
that's so cool. I like
It
when
is
they did that. I
definitely one of
didn't
the
like
better.
the last Predator movie, the one that came out before that.
Yeah, where they
It was a very
I
with
liked the
the
first
Super Predator and the Predator Hounds. Like,
that right before it got to that part though, like when they were introducing like the loonies and stuff and that stuff. I liked the first half of it, but then
yeah.
it got really weird the second half. I was like, damn it, you had something there, but then you went into like this weird Marvel movie basically where he's like got an Iron Man suit at the end. I'm like, so close, but no. Like you great how you set it up. I thought the setup was great. I loved the like characters. They had Key from Key and Peele in there and stuff. And I
Yeah.
liked them. I thought them like, all right, this is kind of reminding me of the first Predator movie with like some cool, unique characters that are gonna go up against it. But then they're like, now there's a bigger one, and he's got dogs, and you're gonna like, there's this big spaceship thing that they all hang on to. It went way too fucking off the rails for me. I was like, no, okay, sad. But
Yeah,
no,
like
the
what is
Prey is
it?
good though. Prey is definitely one of the best sequels of the Predator franchise. It's not better than the original, of course, but it's one of the higher up there, up in the ranking of it. And
Yeah,
Naru, just like we're talking about final girls and stuff, she is badass. She's great. I think she's definitely one of mine up there. So her, Dutch, and Michael, I think, out of the Predator franchise, are my favorite survivors. So
that's cool. Gory B movie agrees. She says Prey was great. You mentioned the traps. We can't talk about Final Girls and Traps without talking about Nancy Nancy
Exactly.
Thompson. Because this was before Home Alone, and she set up all these traps on like the stairs and like in the basement, and
She did it in
she
like
actually
10 minutes
she
too.
chases after Freddy after a while. She gets fed up, and she's like, you know what? No, you took out my boyfriend. You're going down.
He like sucked Johnny Depp into the bed and all the blood came out. It was so amazing. I
So
hated it
cool.
in the video game. Like even me as a kid, I'm like, why am I playing as him? He didn't live. Why can't I play as Nancy in the regular Nintendo game? Like
Yeah,
why am I Johnny Depp's character? I should have been Nancy's. Like it's so kind of sexist there. But whatever. Like when I beat Metroid and I found out Samus was a girl, I'm like, that's awesome. So I don't
yeah,
get why I couldn't be Nancy in the or Nightmare on Elm Street game. But yeah, Nancy's great. Not only does she set up those traps, she does it in like 10 minutes because she tells her dad to come back in like 20 minutes, right? And she'll
yeah.
have Freddy like pulled out of there. And then she goes to talk to her mom for a little while. That means she set up all those traps in 10 minutes and still managed to put herself to bed and everything and all that stuff. So she is like insane, but I love Nancy regardless. She's great. I loved how they brought her back in part 3. Part 2 is actually the first movie I like out of the series I saw. Like I said, I was like about 4 or 5 years old when I saw it, and I just really remembered Freddy on the bus. Remember the birds exploding and the stuff that happened to the coach in the showers. That stuff like imprinted on my mind. I was like, whoa, this Freddy guy's a creepy motherfucker. But I love the first one obviously better, except for the weird ending where her mom gets pulled in through the door. Everything else was
Yeah,
great though.
yeah.
um that's just studio meddling, though. Unfortunately, studios will ruin things. I just kind of think of that as an extra dream in there that really didn't kill her. But even just because Freddy stops torturing you, you would probably still have nightmares. I mean,
Oh,
that
probably, yeah. That's pretty
would like,
dramatic.
drive you more insane because he would still be in your dreams, but he wouldn't be the real threat anymore. So you'd never feel safe for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah. It be sort of like Inception. You feel like it was a dream within a dream, sort of, because you wouldn't know if it was actually him coming for you or if you're just imagining it.
Exactly. You would never sleep right again unless you just thankfully had a blackout dream where you didn't remember any of it.
Yeah, yeah, real quick. Gory B Movies says, praise her favorite horror movie so far this year. She likes it more than Black Phone. Ooh, that says a lot. Mine is X so far this year. And I want to talk about Maxine because she's a really good final girl too. Like
Yeah.
she's out in like the middle of nowhere in Texas and she has to survive against Pearl and all her friends are getting killed around her and her boyfriend and everything like that. But she manages to survive. And then you get the twist at the end. I won't say anything about that because that movie's still pretty new and I don't want to ruin it for anyone. But yeah, Maxine's definitely she's up there on my list for survivors.
Yeah, Maxine was great. She's got that X factor, as they say.
Oh, I see what you did there.
She should definitely be mentioned. I liked the Black Phone as well. The kid in that, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he was
Oh,
cool.
was it Spinny or something?
Yeah, something like
Spinning in
that.
or something?
His little sister was cool too. Like I loved how it's messed up and like a trigger warning for people that haven't seen the Black Phone yet. But there's gonna be a lot of child violence in that. But as someone who kind of scrapped alongside his siblings and cousins and stuff, I kind of like related to that scene where they're like fighting in the yard and when someone gets too hurt, they just go sit over by the fence because that kind of shit kind of did happen in my childhood.
Gory says X was good, but the old lady makeup was bad. Looking forward to Pearl. Yeah, I agree. The makeup wasn't the best. Like you could tell it was prosthetics and stuff like that. But I thought the performance was good. Like I didn't know that she played both roles until the credits rolled. That kind of blew me away when I found that out.
I kind of suspected that, but I think she did a great job as Maxine, as you said. And then, yeah, I didn't. I think they could have just got an older lady to play Pearl, and then still had the same actress as Maxine to be a younger version of Pearl for the new movie.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think X was great. It was a solid movie. I've seen it more than once because I've liked it. So
Oh yeah, definitely. It's certainly my favorite, and I like the way that she just handles the whole situation because she starts off, she's not so innocent. She's a stripper. She's doing drugs, stuff like that. She's breaking all the rules for horror movies, but she still manages to pull out and persevere. She uses same thing, tenacity. She's got courage. She faces her fears because after a while, she's just had enough, right? And she just wants to get out of this like isolated farmhouse situation because she just wants to go home.
exactly. As for Nancy, like I said, I loved how she came back in part 3. Though I love in the original how we're like set up to like very Psycho-esque, where we're thinking Tina's probably going to be the final girl, but then it jumps to Nancy, and then Nancy comes back in part 3, and when she dies in that, she's still great. And then Heather Langenkamp comes back for a new Nightmare, And her son Dylan, once again, like I said, I saw these as little kids. So Dylan Himiko Hughes, I related to him. I mean, I knew he was kind of like at the time when I remember that came out, I thought he was like, oh yeah, he's like kind of that smart ass kid from Full House that always like makes fun of Michelle, that I actually kind of like because I'm a smart ass kid too.
Yeah.
The Tanners were a little too wholesome for me because I would have definitely been a smart ass to them. So yeah, Miko Hughes was great, and I loved seeing him in that. Another good little survivor, him and Heather Langenkamp, because she was great in both part 1 and part 3. And it was good to see her like come back and still get to be a survivor in the end with her kid. So.
Yeah, and I like how they handled that part 3 especially a little bit better, because she sacrifices herself to save these other kids that are in that institution. So it's a little different than like Halloween Resurrection or like Texas Chainsaw, like we mentioned before. It was more respectful, in my opinion. And I like how they moved on. It's the actress in New Nightmare, and it's her real son, quote unquote. So it makes it a little more personal for her. Like the stakes are a little bit higher because it's her own child now.
The worst part about Resurrection, that they killed Laurie Strode right in the beginning, was that they did it right in the beginning. Like that beginning of the movie is actually a movie part that I probably would have liked if it was the end of the movie. But it's like, because then after that, it goes into this stupid reality TV, MTV nonsense. It's just like, really? You did Laurie like that just to give me this shitty movie? Like, I liked the one guy in the mental hospital who knew all the facts about serial killers. So when Michael Myers shows up, he's like, oh, Michael Myers, and says his stats. And how she had this big elaborate trap for him. And even how she was like, okay, I got to check real quick, to make sure I'm not killing another innocent person. I actually kind of liked that stuff, but it was the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, and then this shit fucking Buster Rhymes thing follows it. I'm like, what? Why? Give me a good movie that ended with that, and not like a start with that and then everything downhill from otherwise. It was like, Resurrection, fuck you.
Yeah, I agree. You could have built up to it. You could have made it more emotional, more impactful, instead of what was gone. The same could be said for the first Friday the 13th. I'm sorry, the second Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
I was like, if that was the end of the movie, it'd probably be a little bit better instead of putting this bad taste in your mouth for the rest of the film. Like, yeah, JD's cool, but you still got this first like 5-10 minute sequence. You're like, what did I just watch? Like, why was that even in the movie?
And since we're with Halloween, Laurie Strode, obviously amazing. Played by, it was just, I don't know, she's great. Yeah, and she was great. And she's even like more badass than the new ones. And I believe that more than I did with Alice. Like I said, they were just copy pasting. Like they were just, let's rip them off for the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But with the Halloween, I felt like there was some respect to bringing him back. And it kind of makes sense where she is this shut in and like, yeah, she's a badass, but she's not going out looking for him. She's waiting for him to ever show up again. And that makes more sense. But also, as growing up, though, as much as I loved Laurie in the first movie, she's great. Second movie, she's in bed, and the last Starfighter falls in love with her for whatever reason because she just lays in bed all day, like in the hospital. But this, actually, I really liked Jamie Lloyd growing up, her daughter. Like, I was like, oh, cool. And Loomis with a really little girl, and I was like, because especially he's supposed to be like this child psychologist that never could reach Michael. So I thought it was cool to see him actually helping a child, because instead of just talking about like that, I was like, I like that. I really like Jamie Lloyd. Plus Danielle Harris is amazing. So, and I was younger than her. So at the time when I had a little crush on her, it made sense because I was younger than her.
Oh, for sure. Real quick, Movie Massacre says, what's up, gentlemen? He just got off work. Thank you for joining us, Movie Massacre.
What up, Rich? That's my buddy.
Yeah, he just visited you guys, eh?
Yeah, he hung out with us recently. I'm gonna go film some of my movie down in his property.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Corey says Miko Hughes is returning in the fan film Dylan's New Nightmare. Oh,
yeah, I believe that's being done by the horror show. So.
Oh, nice.
They're also, they got their movie going. I got a different movie called LOLs.
Oh yeah. Do you want to plug that real quick in case people don't know what you're talking about?
Yeah, we're just filming a little horror movie called LOLs. It's about if you've ever followed my show, you know that I am Danny Knightmare. I'm like a slasher. My wife is Gory B Movie. She's a witch. And then we have like this half demon son named LOLs, who wears masks, and he usually does his magic and pranks us a lot of the times on the show. But this is going to be where this guy runs afoul of him in the woods and gets tormented by him. So it should be fun.
That sounds awesome. Hopefully you get enough backers so that you can actually make this thing real, because I'm looking forward to it. That sounds really cool. Since we're talking about Halloween, I want to talk about John Strode. He was from Halloween H2O.
Yeah.
Just Forgotten Son. He's actually pretty badass too, because he was like, he's very aware of his surroundings, and he realizes something isn't right with what's going on. Like, his friends start disappearing after a while, and then eventually it's just him and his girlfriend and his mom, and it's just the three of them, and they have to try to get out and try to escape Michael Myers' wrath. And I thought it was really cool. Josh Hartnett does a pretty good performance. I think it's really underrated. A lot of people forget about him. And Halloween H2O, I think that movie overall is really underrated, because people will say that it just like copy Scream, kind of like Brad and Chucky did too. But I disagree with that to a point. I think they were just trying to breathe new life into the franchise. And I think I like H2O more than I do like Halloween Kills and Halloween 2018. But that's just my opinion. That's probably a hot take.
It definitely has its 90s flavor that like Scream kind of set the bar for.
Yeah.
But it's still its own story. It's still Michael Myers. I actually think H2O is one of the better sequels. There is a deleted scene where she actually even talks about how she had a daughter named Jamie. like it's just like kind of like brushed in there. They deleted that scene. They like said basically because she had to fake her own death to get away from her. She thought maybe that'd be the safest thing for her. I don't know. They don't explain a lot about it, but they do actually have a deleted scene that tells you that Jamie does exist, but they got rid of it. I do think H2O is great. LL Cool J is actually in that, and he's also technically a survivor. So there you go.
Yeah,
but he doesn't have to like roundhouse kick Michael Myers at the end of the movie. You know, he doesn't like trick or treat, motherfucker. He can just be a survivor. Like nobody had to fuck up Michael Myers that way. Like so when people ask me who would win in a fight, Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, I'm like, well, Buster Rhymes beat Michael Myers, so Jason Voorhees wouldn't get roundhouse kicked into the fucking fire and like get electrocuted and shit. Like, so
no, he punched the guy in the face and knocked his head off.
Exactly. So I don't know. It's just there. That tells me who would win right there.
Movie Master says, I miss you too. I've been excited to come over at the end of the month. I'm going to try to free up some time so I can come over in September. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. We live in Washington.
Awesome.
Where there's sparkly vampires and Bigfoot.
Zigma noticed my Halloween decoration, my little cat there, and the pumpkin.
I like it.
I've also got a little banner. I don't know if you can see it. It says trick or treat.
Treat. Motherfucker.
I usually start decorating around like August for Halloween. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday.
Yeah.
Movie Basket says, I can confirm he has a calendar. I've seen it. My calendar is actually on the other side of the wall. Here, see that? Right there. But yeah, since we're talking about slashers, why don't we just talk about Sydney? Because they mentioned her before.
Oh, yeah.
She probably is.
To get that 90s flavor like we were talking about. So it kind of helped bring life, because I loved New Nightmare, but unfortunately that didn't set the world on fire with Wes Craven like reinventing himself and the slasher genre just yet. Like it came close. It was very meta, and I loved it as a horror person, but Scream was, I think it still is the most I guess well, it did the best it did the best in the box office out of all slasher movies of all time. I think actually the three top box office slashers of all time would be Scream, Scream 2, and Scream 3. 4 is somewhere in like the top 20, and I actually don't know where 5 falls, but Scream just did a great job. Like it got people talking again. I saw it in the drive-in, because that's where I wasn't living there anymore, but I used to live at a drive-in, but I went back to it to see Scream. And yeah, I didn't expect 2 killers.
Yeah, that really blew me away.
I really was like thinking Stu was the killer, but they like kind of, I thought Billy was just a red herring, and then it turned out it was both Billy and Stu, and I was like, holy shit. Okay.
First time I saw it, I thought it was going to be Randy.
Oh.
Scream's actually the first horror movie that I actually watched all the way through, and it's what got me into horror in the first place, because it was that one that got me curious about the ones that they're talking about throughout the movie. Like they talk about Halloween, for example, and talk about The Howling. They also talk about Prom Night and the bunch of Jamie Lee Curtis movies. Like it really did introduce me to this entire world, and it was from there that I discovered Chucky and Nightmare and Friday and Halloween and all these great things that we have to enjoy.
I'm glad it opened up the gates for you. I remember, just like I said, I started watching this stuff as a little kid because probably irresponsible parents, but I don't care. I would talk to kids like on the playground at school, and I'd mention Chucky and Xenomorphs and stuff, and they'd only have a vague understanding of what I was talking about. So it always kind of disappointed me. But then the 90s came in, and I liked Candyman, and I liked the sequels to Chucky, and I thought, and Leprechaun, and these other horror movies that came out. But people still didn't really understand what I was talking about, like until Scream. Then everybody was excited about horror all of a sudden. They're like, "Oh, let's talk about Scream." I'm like, "Okay, I'm glad that everybody likes horror now." All of a sudden, like it was a kind of a big deal, and I really appreciate that Wes Craven did that again. As much as I'll always think Freddy was like his biggest contribution, I have to say Ghostface got everyone talking. So there you go.
Oh, for sure. It's Sydney especially. She's faced off not just against one killer, not two killers. There's like 7 or 8 different Ghostface killers, and she faced off against all of them. And she's still standing. She's still talking about it. And of course, she owns a gun. She's Sydney Prescott.
Yeah, something
And it's
that
so hard. No matter who she's up against, she still finds a way to outsmart that person and kind of use their strengths against them. Like in the first one, she calls them up on the phone and she uses the voice changer. She even stabbed Billy while wearing the mask. I thought that was a nice touch because he jumps out of the closet, the same closet from the beginning.
yeah, definitely.
So I thought that was a nice touch. I also want to talk about Gail Weathers because she's more underrated. Like no one really talks about her, but she's survived all the Scream movies too. Like she's been right there along with Sydney and Dewey to a point too. But obviously we know how
until the recent movie, yeah. Just until recently, Dewey. Who actually is your favorite of the three, though? Like
my personal favorite, I have to go with Sydney. I'm more of a Sydney fan. I think I'm more relatable to Sydney. Just the way she, I think it's interesting too that she was not a horror movie fan, but she's thrown in her own horror movie and she still manages to find a way to get out of it. Like she's not like, oh, it's caught up on the rules and stuff like this. She probably doesn't know the rules as well. It's like Randy and some of the other ones do. And she has this boyfriend that's obsessed with these horror movies, but it never really clues in because he's always talking about The Exorcist and he talks about a bunch of these, especially in the video store. He's in the horror section, and Randy comments on that. And Stu's just like, whatever, man. She just likes watching movies. So they kind of play with it the whole time. It's like you said, but I really thought he was going to be the red herring. And the first time you see it's 2 killers in that first one, it's very mind blowing. Like, yeah, because that just wasn't a thing. It was always just one person doing the dirty acts, dirty deeds, I should say.
There was a couple like old 80s slashers. Like, there's one where like it's like a Santa Claus slasher, and like these girls are at a big sorority school and they didn't leave for Christmas vacation. And there's a Santa slasher, and then like even at one point he wears a knight of shining armor type suit armor and kills it. That actually did have 2 killers. There are a few that have done it first, but for whatever reason, like I just wasn't thinking about that stuff at all. I just assumed there would be 1 killer, and I feel like they did it the best, even if they weren't the first, to have the multiple killers and like really make you suspect everyone. Even in part 2, it's like, are they going to do 2 killers again? Is that what they're going to do? Are they going to do that? Like I wasn't sure. And then like in 3, they didn't do that. I'm like, well, that's weird. I mean, there's 3 killers if you count Jay and Silent Bob killing it in that movie. But regardless, there usually is more than 1 killer. So when the newest movie came out and it was like the killer's on the poster, I'm like, well, yeah, there's Ghostface right there, but then there's always more than 1, at least usually. I mean, 3 is the rare exception. I also have like a real fan theory where I feel like Ghostface is a bit supernatural, and that's why every time when they're on the phone or dressed like him, they fight like him. They all like kind of have his same attributes. They all talk like him. They have his mannerisms. It's like this manifested hatred for mostly Sydney's mom, but then it got projected onto Sydney herself, where it's just like until that hatred goes away, they will all be consumed. Like anybody who hates her for whatever reason, like this invades their heart and mind. And I would kind of say that's possible because there are ghosts. Like she has Ghost Mom in part 3, and there's the ghost of Billy in part 5. So I would say there is a supernatural element to it. And that's just how I feel Ghostface. It doesn't matter who is killing as Ghostface. They all kind of have this supernatural hive mind, like of hatred that they share for Sydney and her family.
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't really thought of it like that before.
Because, I mean, they're different sizes, they're different motivations, but they all fight and sound like the same. They all have that same nastiness that Robert L. Jackson, honestly, Robert L. Jackson, he needs to always be the voice of Ghostface, in my opinion. He's pretty irreplaceable. He's also the voice of Mojo Jojo from the Powerpuff Girls, but I mean, as long as he keeps being, he is Ghostface, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it doesn't matter who's the killer at the end. It gets unmasked Scooby-Doo wise, but Robert L. Jackson, like I said, he's a great. Met him not too long ago. He signed a poster for Gory, but yeah, I think that character, the reason why they all sound the same, it's not just a voice changer, because they all talk the same. They all have the same mannerisms, you know. It doesn't matter if it's a little girl or it's a big guy. If they're in the suit, they fight the same. They're all pretty clumsy, to be honest, but they also have the same attributes. So I think it is, like, in a sense, supernatural, just for me, in my head. My fan theory.
That's pretty interesting. I have to agree with Robert L. Jackson too. I met him back in June at Niagara Falls Comic Con, and he's actually the sweetest person to sit down and talk with. Like, it's kind of funny. After my initial interview with him, I actually kept bumping into him at the convention. So there's times where we would just sit and have coffee and just talk, like not even about movies. We would just kind of talk. Like, it was just kind of cool. He's so like down to earth, and a lot of people don't realize that actors are more down to earth than what they realize. Like, not all of them are just like out there and like crazy because you hear about the media stories and stuff like that. Like, they're people too. And since we're talking about the Scream movies, I want to talk about Joel Jones from Scream 2. He was the cameraman, and he was the only person in Scream that was smart enough to be like, "Nope, I'm out. Yep. I'm done. I'm just gonna go." So like halfway through the movie, he leaves. But that makes him one of the smartest characters in the whole franchise.
Well, also, Friday the 13th Part 2, where they go to the bar and drink, and he's one of the main counselor guys. He just stays there to drink, and he survives because he never comes back.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to stay in town now.
I always wanted to do like a sequel. I mean, unfortunately, with the rights in Friday the 13th, I don't know how anybody could really make the sequel, because you got to get both people on board for it, because the rights are split. But I wanted always a sequel. What's his name from Part 2? I can't remember right now. But he survived because he went to the bar and just stayed there. But I wanted to do it where he wrote this book about how he survived Jason Voorhees and all this stuff. And everybody's like, well, at the end of the, he's doing a documentary about his book, because his book tour. And they're like, well, you got to go to Camp Crystal Lake, and like, get a big significant moment where you look onto the lake, and, for the end of your documentary, like how you're brave enough to go back. Because honestly, nothing bad happened to that guy. He was drunk all night and stayed up in town. So he's like this big lie, basically, is his book. And then when he goes back there and they do the documentary and they show it, but then like in the very far background, you see Jason Voorhees at the end of the lake looking at them. So they got to try to get their asses out of there before he kills them all. That's something I was working on, but I don't think with rights it wouldn't matter even if I could do it. I do love how Tommy Jarvis, though, as we were talking about him earlier, is continuing on in the Never Hike Alone series. Like, they actually got the actor from Part 6 to come back for that, and
That's cool.
He's doing that. Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, and Never Hike Ever, or something like that. Oh. So those are cool, by Vincent DiSanti. Even though they're fan films, I think they're really well made. There's a good budget in there. The kills are great. I'd say check those out. Speaking of Jason, though, and like just like his influences, Adam Green's Hatchet / Victor Crowley. Once again, bringing back Danielle Harris as Mary Beth. The first one, it's not. I can't remember the actress's name, but she's okay. But it was the studio who really wanted her. And once Adam took it back from the studio, he just was like, no, Danielle Harris. That's who I wanted from the get-go. She's, no, Hatchet 2, 3, and then she does make a cameo at the end of Victor Crowley. And then Laura Ortiz as Rose in Victor Crowley. Well, I love her as a final person because, like, she's got the flare gun and she's even got the axe, and she just throws it, and then he catches his own axe, and the flare gun it misses him completely. It's like, she's great, but at the same time, she's great because she's not great.
Like, try so hard.
I tried.
I just want to touch back on Scream real quick, and I want to talk about Tara Carpenter, because she's the only person to survive the initial Ghostface attack in the beginning, and that really subverted expectations. I thought she was going to be a goner, but no, she actually survived it, and that's one of the things I thought separated Scream 5. Scream 5 really does a good job of kind of going along with the rules, but Scream has a very strict playbook, right? But once in a while, it kind of winks at the audience, and it does things that you wouldn't expect like that. And I thought it was cool that Terry actually makes it all the way to the end. was not expecting her to survive that movie at all, especially in the hospital scene when she's trying to roll away and she falls on the ground. I was like, oh, she's gone. She's done now. But no, she fights back. She even leaves like noticeable bruises on Ghostface, like, and that kind of helps solve the case later on too. So I think she deserves to be mentioned in this.
She does. And in fact, I love that because that had me guessing throughout the whole movie. I suspected Tara as one of the killers because she
Really?
survived. I thought that was so
Yeah.
suspect that she survived. I was right though, because right at the beginning, because she gets her little like, oh, she's talking to Amber. I know it's a bad joke and stuff, but I had an Amber alert in my head. I'm like, okay, so Amber's in on this. Amber is definitely one of the ghost faces. But I was like, wouldn't it be crazy if it's her and Tara, and the whole opening thing was just staged by the two of them? Like, and it was close. I mean, it wasn't Tara. She just survived because Amber didn't really want her to die. Amber actually was a good friend to her, but she wanted to lure her sister and everybody else in there because they wanted to kill other people. And it ended up being her sister's boyfriend, the guy that I mostly know as Huey from The Boys, or whatever. But
yeah. I always thought Amber was sus because she was very like strangely overprotective of Tara. Like she was very territorial about her, and like the way she looked at her, and the way she looked at other people, and she's like, "Stay away from my Tara." It's like, whoa, you're a little possessive there. Like
that made me. I love that because I was right about Amber. I was very sus of her, but I knew there was probably another killer, and I was actually leaning towards Tara there. So I'm pleasantly wrong in that, but at the same time, I was just like. That's why I like Scream 5. I was like, it had me guessing. I'm like, is it Tara really like, I mean, she was willing to hurt herself to like really be like, fake everyone out. And it would have been nice. Yeah. I could have seen that and that would have been cool, but it still was cool because at least the movie had me guessing either way.
yeah, that was good for keeping you guessing for sure. Corey says we did the big battle with survivors, Sydney versus Gail. I think Sydney ended up winning that one. Was that what people voted for? Yeah, I thought so.
I don't know. I think Gail might actually win that fight because she's a little dirtier as a fighter.
But the brick, she'll throw rocks. She'll do whatever she can.
Exactly.
She'll punch and kick below the belt. She'll do
push a cameraman in the way.
yeah.
She'll have Dewey arrest her. Out of the three, though, I mean, Randy was my favorite in the first movie out of the survivors. Because he related to me. I'm short. I love horror movies, as you can see. Like I really related to Randy. So when they killed him off in the second one, I was like, oh, okay. It was. I felt like it was kind of a shitty way to go to because he just got pulled into the van, which very rookie mistake for Randy. I'm like, what? Whatever. Yeah. It was what it was. And honestly, I loved the dynamics throughout the whole movie. Looking back, as much as I do love Sydney, I think she's great. But I am a Dewey Gale invested more in their investment because of their relationship is like, except for Scream 3, where he's just like the bodyguard of the fake Gale and stuff. I didn't really care about that, but that's not Scream 3's fault. It wasn't lazy writing. It was rushed writing because they had to rechange everything. Because originally Matthew Lillard was coming back. They had to even buy him out of his contract. He was coming back. He was going to be the killer as Stu from prison and have a bunch of teenagers doing his killing for him. But then... all the shootings started happening and stuff. So they're like, nah, we don't want that. So they had to rewrite everything and throw Jay and Silent Bob in there randomly, as I said earlier. But so with other than the exception of 3, I've always been really invested in Gale and Dewey's storyline from the first 2 movies and then the last 2 movies, especially. Where I was just like, oh, wow, it's just entertaining for me. I was more of a Dewey guy, but sadly Dewey's gone now. And between Gale and Sydney, I don't know. I like them both. I think, I don't know. I feel like Sydney was a little more forced in the new movie. Like that phone call where she says, I ain't coming over there. That made sense. And I feel like that probably should have just been her only role in that movie. But then Dewey dies and she shows up and I get that. But I feel like if she's not in the next movie, it would be nice for a cameo or something. But if she's just not, it makes sense. Like Sydney should get to live her life now. She's got kids. She's got a husband. Why would she keep coming back for this nonsense unless it's directly going after her kids and husband? So
exactly.
Unless that's the plot, then okay. But if it's not, then just let her be out of it. Like I don't need her to be in it. I love Sydney, but she doesn't need to be forced into my Scream movie.
Yep. Have Cheetah says, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids on that talk. That's what I like about this movie, though. It's always the whodunit. And like Chucky and Friday and Nightmare, you know who the killer is right off the bat. But with each of the Scream movies, you're always scratching your head like, who could it be? And that's always more interesting that way. Like it's more of the who done it aspect.
And even though 5 was a little on the nose with that, it would be like in real life. It would be like you'd just be like, okay, especially if you're Dewey in the situation. It's one of you fucking punk ass kids. Like I would just automatically, yeah, okay. It probably is the boyfriend. I love how he tells her that too. He just straight up says that. And he was right. Yeah. It's like, yeah. Honestly, how about I detain you and see if there's any killings within the next 24 hours?
Yeah, exactly. But at least with Dewey, it goes back to that respect thing. Like he sacrificed himself. Like, well, it wasn't really intentional, but he remembered he had to shoot him in the head. So he just wanted to make sure that the whole group was safe. So he went back there. And by doing so, he did kind of sacrifice himself because he's going like face to face against this killer. And at least with that, there was purpose for it. Like it was part of the plot, and it's what brought Sydney and Gale back together. So I thought that was an difference. At least there was a reason for it. Like not like before with Laurie and Sally.
No, there was a reason for it. It's just sad. And once he said that, and I knew he was walking back, I'm like, all right, Dewey. You know, I was just like,
I knew
that was gonna happen. I'm like, this is it. I know that there's so many times where he's like survived, but they didn't build up to that point where he got stabbed. So it's like by 4, when he got stabbed a bunch of times, I figured he'd still survive because they'd already done the fake out since every movie since then, where he's like, yeah, he gets stabbed a bunch or shot or whatever, and he still lives. But it was just a little different with 5. It hit differently how he delivered it, and like just the music and everything. I'm like, this is it. This is what. And as much as I love 4, that's my big complaint about 4 is it didn't really change anything. Like all the main characters are alive. Nothing like you could sadly take 4 out of the story and there wouldn't really be any difference between 3 and 5. Like I love 4, but like at the end of those 3 main characters, nothing has really changed. Like if you didn't have 4, it wouldn't change a whole lot. So I was glad with 5, as much as it really pained me because I was a Dewey guy. At least it had the balls to go there, you know, make a change.
Yeah. I like how I had Officer Judy too from Part 4. Like they at least included Part 4. Like, and then someone at one point references too there hasn't been a Ghostface killing in Woodsboro since 2011. So obviously they're referring to that movie.
Yeah.
So I do like how they included it. And I love Part 4. Like 4 is one of my favorites. But I see what you mean though. Like if you took it out of the equation, the franchise would still be the same. Like I do agree with that because all those characters are dead except for Kirby. So she's supposed to come back for 6. So that's pretty exciting. I'm hoping Matthew Lillard comes back for 6. Real quick, Movie Massacre says you should try and head over to Crypticon in Seattle next year, FLIXTER. That sounds like fun. I'm going to be going to Fan Expo in Toronto actually at the end of the month, so I'm looking forward to that.
There you go.
Gory, if I need a mod, I do, but I don't know how to do that, Gory. So, I don't know how do I make people a mod?
You give them a little wrench. I think you just kind of hover over their name and it should kind of give you a little wrench option.
Okay, 1 second. I'm learning all this stuff as I go, eh?
It's all good, man.
It's not working.
If you're ever down this way, we'll film another Canadian Jason and you can be my survivor.
That's awesome. I love that.
He's just kind of a reoccurring character on my show.
So. Oh, that's awesome. Is there anyone else that you wanted to mention? We covered Scream, we covered Halloween, Friday, Chucky.
Sarah Connor. I mean, she was a waitress. The first movie I would say is definitely a horror movie. It's basically a slasher, but just with a robot that shoots you instead. She's a total badass by the second movie, and then it goes crazy from there on, obviously, with all the different versions of the sequels that kind of spin off and choose to ignore each other or not. But the first 2 movies, Sarah Connor has got a great arc. Definitely a badass. Let's see. We mentioned them. Christy from Hellraiser. That was great. She's in the first 2 movies. She survives her franchise. Later on, she comes back technically as kind of the villain, but she's survived her franchise. So Christy from Hellraiser was always great. Want to mention her real quick. Oh, yeah, buy my shirt. Obviously my all-time favorite survivor, Ash fucking Williams. Like, it doesn't matter how old I was. In fact, the first movie I ever saw out of those was The Army of Darkness because my dad was the manager at the theater. and I just saw this giant cardboard cutout of Army of Darkness, Bruce Campbell, and it's got the little evil Bruce Campbell's by his foot and the woman and like all this stuff. And I'm like, he told me I couldn't see it, but the people that worked for my dad at the theater were also my babysitters and stuff. They just let me go in. And I watched it. I was just like, oh my God, chainsaw arm. This is so cool. He's killing skeletons. He's fighting deadites. It's just like, I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I was just a little kid. I loved fucking Ash Williams in Army of Darkness. Later on, I saw the first Evil Dead, like when I was probably in 5th, 6th grade. And then like a couple years after that, I saw Evil Dead 2 when I was like in junior high, and it clicked. I'm like, holy shit, it's the same fucking franchise. Like, because he gets his chainsaw arm in part 2, and I'm like, holy shit, I did not even know that. My mind was exploded, and like, I loved all the trilogy of that. Ash, in the first one, he's kind of a wimp, and like, he kind of steps up at the very end to save himself, but he lets his friends kind of like die and sacrifice and stuff before he really steps up. And then he's that wisecracking badass by the end of part 2, and then when he gets to like the Army of Darkness in 3, he's just like, I don't give a shit anymore, baby. Like, I'm just here to fuck shit up, basically. Like, this is all about me. And he's a selfish coward in a lot of ways, but he always comes through, like, mentally and emotionally at the end of it. Like, he knows how to, he's always bettering himself. And I feel like I really attach to that, because even though I'm very flawed like Ash, I'm trying to better myself as every fucking day. So I love Ash Williams. Evil Dead 2 is my favorite movie of all time.
That's awesome. He definitely has one of the more interesting character arcs, because it starts off one way, and then by the third one, he's completely like totally the opposite. Yeah. And you're there with him on your journey this whole time. Like, this guy travels through time and everything, and he faces off against demons, and he goes through so much just inconceivable stuff, and he still survives. And then you got Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV show, which is also amazing. If you guys haven't seen that, you should watch that. Do you like that show?
I love the show. I love Kelly Maroney in that. I love Pablo. I love Dana DeLorenzo as Kelly, and then Pablo. I just think they're fucking great. But as I mentioned Kelly, though, I wanted to say something about Kelly Maroney and Christina Mary start in Night of the Comet, because I thought that was cool. It's about these two girls who are like the last people, and they kick ass. There's some zombies out there, and other random people get turned into Tang or Kool-Aid or something. But I thought that was Regina and Samantha from Night of the Comet. So I thought they were cool. I also want to shout out to Linnea Quigley in both as Spider from Sorority Babes of the Slime Bowl-orama, and her character as Samantha as well from Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, because Linnea Quigley is not usually the survivor girl. She's a scream queen for sure. But those two movies, she does make it to the end. So shout out to Linnea Quigley. She's done a lot for horror, and I appreciate all of it. As for Friday the 13th, we didn't mention Tina. She's like kind of a ripoff of Carrie, but I love that, because she's like, you know, she fights Jason. It's kind of supernatural versus supernatural, and I thought that was cool. It's the closest thing you're probably going to get to Jason versus Carrie. So there you go.
I like how the makeup effects in that too. I think that was also Kane Hodder's first performance as Jason.
Yeah, and he's
and the makeup in that is amazing. Like Jason, when the mask gets ripped off his face.
In the first movies of Jason, he's like a very interesting character, and he's just a big, bulky, kind of on the spectrum guy who wants to kill people who, pissed off his mom and got him killed, I guess. I don't know it depends on how you look at it. Was he ever dead? Did he come back when his mom died? I don't know. But either way, he's mortal. Like, you could kick him in the dick and it'll hurt him, as Ginny did. There's things
you can do. He died till part 4, actually. It was Tommy Jarvis that killed him.
That's when he's definitely officially dead. I don't know if he died as a child or not, but that's when he's officially dead. We know for a fact he's dead, and that's why he's not in part 5. He comes back in 6, and he's got this kind of weird, he's not super angry. He's just confused. When he rips off a guy's arm, he just kind of looks at it like, huh, I have this weird Frankenstein strength. It's it's a little different. These people shoot him with paintballs. He just, what? He bends people backward, but he's not this super angry character yet. And 7, when he's finally, because Tommy Jarvis kept him at the bottom of that lake, and Kane Hodder brings him back, and he looks almost like a weird mutant ninja turtle underneath that mask. He is fucking pissed.
So angry.
He's super angry, And then when he goes to New York, he's kicking boom boxes, and then he goes to space, and he's smashing frozen heads and beating up holograms. Even he is angry for those movies. Like even Jason Goes to Hell. Sadly, he's in weird different people's bodies. It's a weird body snatcher movie, but he's still a very angry, pissed Jason every time Kane Hodder plays him, and I love that. It's like I wouldn't fuck with that Jason. And of all the other Jasons, like that one is just nope, don't fuck with it. Just get away from it as far as possible.
He's just so intimidating and like overbearing and overpowering. Like he has this commanding screen presence, and
Yes.
I was disappointed when he wasn't going to be in Freddy vs. Jason.
Oh, me too. Like, because
But
especially
that's
he
how it
played
goes.
Freddy's hand as he brought the Jason mask down in Freddy vs. Dead.
Yeah.
That's because New Line Cinema owned both of them now. So it's like they teased that, and we waited forever. And we waited
10 to 15
forever.
years.
And then we got a trailer for Jason X, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. He's in space now. And then
Yeah.
finally, oh, Freddy vs. Jason gets announced. I'm like, holy shit. I was so disappointed when I heard that Kane Hodder wasn't involved, but I was still super hyped for it regardless. And I remember,
It's great.
it's like there was really no line outside the movie theater, but me and my friends made one. Like we were waiting. We're like, yep, like, and we went in there and we watched it, and I loved the fight at the end. I'll say that much. I love the big fight at the end. I thought that was done well. There's a lot of things about it that weren't done well, but and yes,
some of the writing choices, yeah.
I wish Kane Hodder would have been in it because I didn't need this. I'm afraid of water. I got pretty blue eyes, Jason. I didn't need that. Like, I know it was to make him more like sympathetic, so you have someone, I guess, to root for. But I don't know. I didn't need it. I wanted Kane Hodder to be him. So
Yeah, that was an odd choice because he swims a lot in the other movies. Like even in part 8, he's like swims to the boat practically. Like he's not afraid of water. Like that was never a thing. So like they could have brought up like mom issues or something like that. You know what I mean? Because Freddy plays with that a little bit in the beginning. But I don't think it was a bad film. Like I think we're pretty lucky to actually have a Freddy versus Jason film, and it does feel equally like both parts of both movies. Like it doesn't feel too one-sided either way. Like one moment you feel like you're watching a Nightmare film, the next moment you feel like you're watching a Friday film. And the battle itself, I thought it was pretty cool. It was just that it could have been a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like some of the writing choices, and Kane Hodder, I did miss him.
Yeah.
Kita also wants to mention KM14 from Jason X. Yeah, we gotta mention that. I think that was his favorite one. I'm not really a big fan of Jason X, but I know it's popular. People like it for whatever reason, so that's cool. If that's your thing, that's your thing. I also want to talk about Aaron from You're Next. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to point out real quick on Jason X. A lot of people they do the death counts and they're like, oh, Michael Myers is coming close to Jason's or whatever, surpassing it. In Jason X, he kills a space station that had over 20,000 people living on it, according to the director. So a little higher up there than what we give him credit for. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, oh, totally. A lot of people forget that too. But no, his body count's probably way higher. His story lasts longer too. His story goes over like hundreds of years if you want to include Jason X, because then at the end of that one, he goes back into the lake and someone's like, "Oh, what was that? It was a shooting star." You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I thought that was funny too. And I like the simulator. We love marijuana and premarital sex.
I just smashing them both.
Yeah.
Doing the sleeping bag kill that was great in part 7. Another reason why 7's awesome because it has the whole sleeping bag kill. Boom.
And even though I'm not a big fan of Jason Goes to Hell, it does have some pretty good kills, like that tent scene. Oh my god, that's so brutal.
I ranked my top 13 kills, and that actually is my favorite one, where it goes through her and it rips her right in half because like it gets her with the big spike and goes right through her. That's great. I think that's amazing, especially the unrated version. Just boom. And I live on the drive-in at the time, and I wasn't allowed to watch that movie, but I watched it out my window just because I could. I just turned on my radio. I lived at the drive-in. Cool. And I watched that over and over again. I love that movie as a kid. I look back on it now and like golden Kandarian dagger and like what? And a family member has to kill him. Like, since when has his family member, other than his mom, ever been a part of the series? But okay, and it's the weird body snatching and stuff. But I love the beginning. Like, I think the beginning's great because they're like, yeah, fuck, the military shows up and they just ambush him and kill him. And then, they're weird random heart eating, but I love when he's actually Jason. It's just unfortunately that's only at the very beginning and the very end. But the kills, I have to say, are amazing. Like even the waitress when the diner and like he stabs her in the rhubarb and then she pulls him in too though. She's like, I'll fuck you up too, even though technically he dies with, like, because he just switches bodies, but
Yeah, it just goes around.
it's just
There's
so
that weird
cool.
little worm thing.
The gore is so great. Like, punches the one person, the one lady in the face. He like deep fries the other guy. It's just fucking great and breaks the arm. The gore is perfectly awesome in part 9, or Jason Goes to Hell, whatever. It's, if anything, it's got a really good gory movie, and I love that. The kills are amazing. I just wanted more Jason and less random body hopping, but whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as part 5 in my opinion, but you know, it's definitely toward the bottom when you want to compare all the movies together. Moving on, I want to talk about Aaron from You're Next. Because
Okay.
this goes back to setting up the traps, and I think this was inspired by Nancy Thompson because she grew up on like this survivalist camp, and she was actually trained for all the stuff that's happening going on. And she's really good at using her environment. Like she's very aware of her surroundings. She'll use anything. It's kind of like MacGyver. I like how you guys put that in that video. She'll take whatever, like a blender, for example. She's trying to blender into a weapon. Like how often do you see that in horror movies? Like that's just so cool. She's very innovative like that. And she's very clever. She tries to get ahead. She's always one step ahead of those 3 killers. And I think it's very good.
Aaron was amazing. Definitely what I said, like, it's one of the cool movies. Like, a lot of times movies will do this nowadays where they'll show like a bunch of vampires go up against something, but then like, oh, the thing they went up against is scarier. But I think Your Next did it perfectly because the killers weren't as like competent as you thought they would be, but Erin is fucking badass, and like there's a good reason why she is too. Like they just did it. I'm like, wow, this movie just turned everything around, and I'm buying it, because sometimes movies do that just to be like shocking or different, but I felt it was very organic with Your Next. Like, okay, this is a cool way of doing that. I love that. And Erin, she was a badass. I think like when we were doing the tournament, she only got knocked out by Sarah Connor, who was like, you know, also doing that shit and fighting Terminators, not incompetent people who were like trying to kill a family member to make a point.
yeah, she's fighting robots in the future. Like it's a little
different. Like Erin herself, like I would still think that she would still give Sarah Connor a run for her money, because
hold her own.
She's fucking, there's no reason why she shouldn't. She's a badass. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, she was played by Shani Vincent. I got that here in my notes. I just wanted to give a little shout out to her because her performance is really good too. Like, it's very believable too. It starts off, they're at this dinner table, and all of a sudden those arrows start getting shot through the windows, and all of a sudden it just kind of clicks, and all of a sudden it just turns, and then into this whole other like slasher movie. And she's like, no, like I'm not gonna die tonight. You know what I mean? And she just takes the whole situation. She grabs the bull by the horns. And she's kind of like Nancy Thompson in that regard. She's just like, nope, I am not going to die tonight. And it's very, very similar. I want to talk about Grace from Ready or Not. And she gets thrown into this whole messed up situation. She thinks it's all fun and games until people actually start dying. And she's like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. And I am not dying tonight. And I love that. She's same thing. She uses her surroundings. She uses her cunning. She outwits the people that she's trapped in this house with. And she's just so good. And that I don't want to say too much. I've seen the movie, but that has like the best ending. Like I love the ending for that movie. It's so good. It's perfect. Pop. Yeah, love it.
I love it. I love how like, because you're like, are these people are nuts or is it real? Like, because some people are like, I just had to play old maid, and I feel like it's funny too, because like you could tell by these people they're shady bastards, and a lot of them married for money. So I guess sacrificing them would be meaningless. But when the one dude actually is marrying for love, is when they draw the card of the hide and go seek card. And I feel like that's why, because the devil really, he wants it to mean something. If you're going to be willing to sacrifice your lover, right? If it was just like for lust and money, then that doesn't mean much. But when it actually did mean something, she gets that card. And I can tell that it was like in point. And Samara Weaving, like I said, just amazing. I love her in like every horror thing she's done so far. Except for Monster Trucks. Not her fault, though. She was great. Monster Trucks just wasn't a good movie. But I want her to keep doing horror because she's amazing. She's amazing in The Babysitter. She's amazing in this. She's amazing in was the Mayhem. She's great in Mayhem.
Yeah.
I think Samara Weaving's just awesome. And in fact, if they really are going to reboot like the whole DC universe, have her play Harley Quinn, because I think she would be an amazing Harley Quinn.
That would be cool. That's interesting. I like that. Real quick, Carrie Crave Cinema says she's popping in to say hello, and she thinks You're Next is phenomenal. Oh, Popcorn's here. I did a video with her last week, I think. We talked about our favorite horror comedies, so you guys should check that out if you haven't seen it. People are just saying hello. She's saying hello to Patrick. Is there anybody else that you want to mention for Final Girls and Boys?
Um.
Uh,
Oh yeah. Crystal from The Hunt. That was pretty
good one.
recent. She
Same sort
also
of scenario as those two, yeah.
Yeah, she like once again, she's like kind of brought into the situation, but the people that are hunting her don't know her because they think that she's somebody else. Because they bring in like all these, I guess they think they're bringing in all these people on the internet who are like preaching right wing propaganda and shit. And she's not. She just has the same name as someone that they brought in. And she actually has a military background. She's not really political either way, left or right. And yeah, she's like, you know what? Fuck you. She fights them. She's better at the arms in them. She's just as good as like the hand-to-hand combat. She's also like pretty. It's kind of dirty, but she will not hesitate. If she thinks that you're not on her side, she'll pull that trigger real quick. Like even there's like two people I think she killed. The movie never straight up tells you, were they on her side? Were they tracking her? Were what like she probably could have let them live, but she's just like no nonsense about any of that. She's like, nope, there's doubt, so boom. And I love Crystal from that. She was also Liberty Bell and Glow, so she's like a pro wrestler. That makes me like relate to her even more. So yeah,
I like how that movie subverts expectations too, because it goes through 5 or 6 people before you actually realize who the main character is.
exactly.
And that whole scene with the gas station is so great because as soon as she smells bullshit, she's like, "No, I'm not doing this. No, this is not right." And then it continues on. And I love how she has like arguments with some of the other characters. She's like, "Well, do you have anything to say to him before I kill him? Because last time you got upset." Like it's that running gag that she's too quick to pull the trigger. And then that final fight scene between like her and Hilary Swank.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. But yeah, that final fight scene, it's both hilarious and just so brutal because they throw each other through like glass doors and up and down stairs and using whatever they can find in the living room as a weapon. Like, and it's a long fight too. Like the whole, I couldn't believe it kept going and going and going. And she really shows that why she's that final survivor. Like she really has what it takes, and she has that training, like you said. And not only that, she has that intuition. She's aware, and if she's not satisfied, she either wants answers or a way out.
Exactly. And I love how she just takes her dress, her jet. She like the people that are on the jet, they're like, whoa, what are you doing here? Because they're spelling the Hilary Swank character. She's like, she's dead. Is that a problem? No. And she's like, all right. And they're like, caviar and champagne. She's like, are you gonna eat it with me? Because I guess make sure it's not poisonous or whatever. And they're like, sure. Okay then. Like, all right. Let's party. And I love that. One more character of a movie that I don't know a lot of people have seen, but it's one of my favorite newest movies is Gravy. And Carrie from Gravy is amazing. It came out in 2015. It's about these, it's almost like Sunny in Philadelphia if it was a horror movie.
Oh, okay.
Because like it's got Michael Weston, but he's like, I feel like it also has Jimmy Simpson, who's one of the McBoyles in Sunny in Philadelphia. He's like the main McBoyle guy, the older brother. And then like this Michael Weston guy, but I feel like it was written for Charlie Day, but then Charlie Day just became an explodedly big character, like it was in these big budget movies. So I don't think they could get him. So they got Michael Weston to like bring out his inner Charlie Day for the movie. But they're killers, and they go around, and what they do is they find restaurants or other businesses, and they like weld themselves in, and it's every Halloween they just partake in cannibalism. So they go to this Mexican restaurant and they weld it in, and they start eating the staff. And like Carrie, she's played by Sutton Foster, and she's the final girl that fights back. But they make them do all these stupid games where they have to do like the 7 like layers of Kevin Bacon or whatever. You like find who like how they get to Kevin Bacon from which actor. They have to do all these other bullshit too, like just physical traits and other mental games and stuff. They really fucking with them. But then like when you lose, they eat you and they make everybody else taste you and like stuff like that. But Carrie Sutton, like she takes the Charlie Day Michael Weston character, and she starts like kind of buttering up to him like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like I would totally probably even join you guys. Because the other guy, like he has a girl from like a previous encounter where like they were killing people and she joined him. So now like he's like, okay. But he also has like a crush on Sarah Silverman, who like works at a gas station. It's funny. But he's like, I don't know. Like he's like, but it's just funny. Like there's this part where like it comes out like in slow motion and he's chasing after her with an axe and it's coming out to La Bumba, La La Bumba. And he's just like, ah, with the axe, and she just pulls out this crossbow and she just like shoots him in slow motion. And it's just fucking hilarious. Like Carrie Sutton was great in that. I just think it's an underrated movie that people need to see. It's called Gravy. It was originally going to be called
I haven't heard of that before. Okay.
It was originally going to be called We Are All Gravy, but it's just been shortened down to Gravy. It's got, like I said, Sarah Silverman and a bunch of other people in it. It's just hilarious. Check it out. It's very violent, it's very brutal. And yeah, Carrie from that movie is one of my latest final girls that I really think is awesome.
That's cool. I hadn't heard of that before, so I'm gonna make sure that I check that out. Carrie Crave Cinema says Alice from Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Master. Yeah, she deserves mention. She did kind of take over the franchise after a while. She kind of filled in a few shoes for a little bit.
But then she passed it on to what's her name? Not Alice, but what was Dan's girlfriend's name? Like for 4 and 5.
Oh, you're right. Tuesday Night. Oh, that was her real name.
Yeah.
Kirsten.
Yeah, Kirsten.
Yeah,
Kirsten takes over. Kirsten takes over.
Cat in part 3.
I liked actually, and I'm probably a hot take, but I like 5 a little more than 4. Like I love how it gets transitioned from Alice to her in 4, even though it's not what's her name anymore, but they switched actresses. Yeah. But she gets it. But then that one she shows up and she makes Freddy look at a mirror and stuff, and I think that's okay. She has like nunchucks. I love how she's geared up to fight him though, like she's going on her. I think that's great. But then it turns out to she makes him look at this weird mirror. And I was like, but then in part 5, they talk about like how sadly it was a nun raped by like 1,000 maniacs in a sense, and you could tell which one really is Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger's dad, because he's played by Robert Englund as well. Yeah. But then like she's got a kid, and even though it's like weird because it's Freddy's mom and a kid, I feel like there's a better way to defeat him than just a mirror. And I don't know. There's both of them have great kills though. I think 4 and 5 are a little underrated, to be honest. I think they're great.
I think 5 is some of the best kills in the franchise. I'm just gonna say it because it's got that motorcycle scene, and it's got so many other ones that are just so good. Like a lot of times, I confuse 4 and 5 with the kill scenes, and I wait for certain moments. I'm like, oh wait, that's the next one.
And I hate to
they kind of mesh together pretty well. Like it's a good continuation. Like if you want to just watch those 2 by themselves, like back to back, like they're kind of like one movie.
I think they are 4 and 5 are great back to back. And I hate to use the word like torture porn or whatever. I feel like some of the Saws, like 5 and 6 of Saw, so I'm just looking for the traps. Yeah, I would have to agree. Maybe in like some of the later Freddy movies, I'm looking for the cool dreams. Like maybe that is the big highlight. I still think the stories are pretty solid, like a little better than they're given credit for. But like cool dreams, like comic books and like video games and these other ones, like in the later Freddy movies, they might not be great movies overall, but some of those inventive kills, like Freddy has always had really inventive kills. Like even the Karate Kid, like he's like fighting the glove flying around at him. I love that shit. Like that's I love it. I mean, maybe it's not the best plot overall, but I still love it. Like just the Freddy crew, his kills were way cooler than most slashers. So
yeah, the kills get more clever as the franchise goes on. I think even like New Nightmare has some pretty good ones.
I agree.
Like I like how it actually explains. It has that callback from the first one. It has the girl; she goes up on the ceiling, like she's up on the wall, but it actually shows the other side of it, like Freddy's dragging her around, stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. It really added like a whole nother level to it, like, and it helps explain a little bit more about what actually happened to Tina in that first scene.
Exactly. I love New Nightmare. I feel like that one's also not just got cool kills, but that's when they like really got back on track with a very heartful story. Like I said, it might not have set the world on fire as much as Scream did, but I was all about New Nightmare and Scream. I loved them both. I was like, fuck yeah. I'm just glad that people started talking about it again. I'm like, okay, because I would talk about all these horror movies to kids my age, and most of them, they vaguely knew what I was talking about, but they didn't get to see them as much as I did, obviously. But then I remember Scream, I started talking about that, and then everybody's like, yeah, I want to talk about that too, because I love Scream. I'm like, oh, you do? I'm like, okay. Fuck yeah. Way to change the game, Wes Craven, several times.
Several times, yeah. I also want to talk about Alex Browning and Claire Rivers from Final Destination.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think Final Destination is another underrated franchise. A lot of people give it a lot of hate, especially 4. 4 is not the greatest, but I really like how 5 turned things around, and it turns out that 5 is actually a prequel to the whole thing, and it helps set
Yeah, I love
everything.
that actually.
But
The only
the
one
first
that I'm
one
not a
especially,
big fan on is 3, to be honest. That's my only one I'm not a big fan on is 3, but everything else is great. 3 has some cool kills that just they kind of went like derp-a-doo, let's go talk to this guy at the gym. Oh, he died. Okay, no reaction. Let's go talk to this guy, and then they died. And then there was some fireworks. But other than 3, I love that franchise. I think it's actually a really good franchise. And 3, even though it is what it is, I still enjoy it.
especially Claire Rivers, I like how she comes back in the second one, and she does everything she can to try and help this other group of survivors. And then you find out the reason they're involved is because they were actually tied together with the guys in the first one, and this kind of escalates and goes from there. And it's unfortunate she didn't make it past part 2, but I thought she was a great character, and I like how she came back for the second one. I didn't
Yeah.
like how they just kind of killed off the other guy off screen. They're like, oh yeah, he
Yeah.
died. It's like, oh well, you could have had like that could have been the opening, you know what I mean? And that sets off the chain of events. Because
Well,
you know what I mean, like they could have did a little bit better with like the writing for
I
that.
agree.
But
Because they
I think
show
it
like
was a good follow up.
the end of part 1, they kind of show like he might die, like stuff coming down and stuff, the big sign
Paris.
or whatever. So
Yeah,
I mean, they could have showed something better. It's once again, it's like, oh, an off-screen kill, kind of like as much as like we were talking about. I love Jamie Lloyd earlier. It was kind of sad that like in Halloween 4, they're like, oh yeah, Jamie or Laurie was killed off screen in a car wreck. I'm like, what?
yeah.
But then you find out in H2O she faked that. But then like they cut out the scene where they talked about her daughter. So I was like, as much as I love Halloween, the franchise is a bit of a mess, like all as a whole. Like it's you got to have a roadmap to know where you're going on that franchise.
Or how they try to explain, oh, she didn't actually decapitate Michael Myers. That was a paramedic that was just wearing his mask. It's like, what? You wouldn't check before? Like, take the mask off and make sure it's him before you start chopping heads. Like, I don't know. Like, I know what you mean.
Exactly. It gets kind of weird. But Final Destination 2, that opening is just amazing. Like, just like that is stuck with me. And like anytime I'm driving on the highway and I see a log truck next to me, I'm like, fuck you, log truck. That is automatically where my mind goes. It's probably like one of the coolest openings with other than that, and like what Ghost Ship or Death Ship or whatever, when the freaking line decapitates like the entire people. As much as you want to like say about that movie, that opening is perfect. Same thing with Final Destination 2. It's like, oh my god, we're in for a ride.
Part 3 actually made me afraid of roller coasters for the longest time because I loved them, and then I saw that movie. I'm like, ooh, I hadn't really thought about the whole thing coming apart like that, and the whole thing. Like 3's not the best movie I know, but that opening scene with the roller coaster, I thought really well done.
That part was great. Same thing with like, the remake of House on Haunted Hill, where they have like the fake roller coaster that crashes off. But I was just like, oh, dude, that messed with me. Even though it was like, I think fake, it still messed with me. I was like, what?
Yeah, for sure. Carrie Crave Cinema says the last 2 Final Destinations kind of lost me, to be honest. I agree with 4. 4 was kind of off the rails. I think they just did that to be kind of like a gimmick, like because 3D was starting to come back at the time, and even some of those kills, they're more silly, like they're more goofy. Like this movie's not. It doesn't take itself as serious. It feels kind of like a spoof movie compared to the other ones. But I do like how 5 brings everything full circle and it brings the tone back. And Tony Todd even came back, so it's always a joy to see him randomly pop up in movies. Carrie also says Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to kill Mike Myers in the contract. She wasn't allowed to. Kevin Williamson found a loophole and chopped off some rando's head. Oh, that's why they did that. Okay. I didn't know that. Thanks, Carrie.
While we're on a kind of like the 3D topic, especially, I'm not going to say it was a good movie. It's one of my least favorites of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Alexandra Daddario as Heather in Texas Chainsaw 3D or whatever.
Okay.
She was a great final person. I loved how like she got to have a Leatherface as like her, almost like her big attack guard dog at the end of the movie. Like they worked together. I thought that was a great twist. I think the first part of the movie is kind of bad because it's just like a really rehash of annoying people with, well, they got smartphones. Look, watch them die. And it really does not add up with her age. Like she should be a lot older. So there's a lot about that movie I don't like, but I do think she was a great survivor. I just feel like they should have rewritten it so it took place in the 90s. We didn't need the smartphones. We didn't need that. Nope. Could have just had it take place in the 90s, and that way her age would have been appropriate. And but like I said, the actress herself and the character, I like them. I just didn't like the movie that much. So,
Yeah, that's probably one of the weaker ones. Aside from like Leatherface, I think that's the one when they're all in the insane asylum and you're trying to figure out which one becomes Leatherface, and then it just totally comes out of left field. They're like, nope, it's not the guy that we set up from the beginning. It's this guy instead. It's like, what? This skinny, scrawny little guy is Leatherface? Like, really?
yeah. I do love the concept of that one, and I'm a little biased because my son's cousin or Gory's cousin wrote it, Seth.
Oh, wow.
And he's a great guy. But what he wrote on paper and how it translated to the screen, I have to admit, didn't work out quite right. I feel like it was cool because he wanted to like concept like what would it take to be this person who has no personality and who has to wear masks to have a personality, because that's like Leatherface's whole thing. He wears a different mask, he has that. So it's like he wanted to like find a way to get someone to that state. But unfortunately, they turned it into this weird road trip movie. And then, like you said, it's just kind of at the end. Oh, this skinny guy, like, where's now his jaws shut and his fat friend died, so he can just become big and fat too somehow. I don't.
Yeah,
it didn't translate well to screen. I have to admit, they changed some things, obviously, and it just didn't look as good as what originally written. Because I read the original screenplay, and I'm like, this is a really well written thing, but unfortunately, they took a lot out, and and also just some things read well, but also just don't show up on screen well. But whatever. I agree.
Corey B. Movie says, what about Mary Beth from the Hatchet franchise? You mentioned Hatchet before, but I don't think you mentioned Mary Beth.
Well, yeah, Mary Beth, Danielle Harris, she's great. Unfortunately, it wasn't Danielle Harris in the first movie, but she plays her in every movie since then, because the studio, I think they wanted somebody else, so Adam Green like broke down and let them, obviously, but then he took it from the studio's hands and he just made the rest of the series by himself, which Adam Green is my probably favorite modern day horror director. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of great ones that are going out there right now, but he's got the humor that I like. He's got the gore that I like. I would definitely like to make movies with that guy someday. But yeah, he brings in Danielle Harris, which I have you can't see it in here, but I have a Danielle Harris calendar. She's amazing. So I think that's great. And then Laura Ortiz in the last one is Rose. Like I said, she throws the hatchet and shoots the flare gun. It's all just fucking wrong. But Danielle Harris, she kicks Victor Crowley's ass. So yeah, Mary Beth is definitely great.
Definitely a badass, yeah. I also want to talk about House of Wax. Nick and Carly, the brother and sister duo.
Yeah.
They're not very good at keeping their friends alive, but they're pretty aware of what's going on. And once they start seeing like what's happening to their friends, they do what they can to try and get out of this little like town, because these two brothers are just totally psychotic. And I like how it subverts expectations, because you think it's the masked brother that's the crazy one, but really no, it's the other guy. He's pulling all the strings, and the other guy, well, the one wearing, I forget their names, but the one wearing the mask is actually kind of like a puppet. Yeah, and I thought that was a pretty good twist. And even just the way that they kill the people with like covered in the hot wax, like that's just so brutal. Just imagining having to sit through that and experiencing it, like, oh, it's very cringeworthy. And even Carly, she tries to get her brother's attention by sticking her finger out when she's trapped, and then she gets her finger cut off, and she gets put through so much. But her brother is really there. Like, I like how it shows that sibling dynamic, because a lot of times in horror movies they have the sibling rivalry, and the brothers and sisters don't really get along, or like whatever, brother, you know what I mean? So it's nice to see that healthy relationship, because Nick was like a bad boy, and Carly's trying to set him on that right path, trying to just try to make him steer clear. Like, she's like the moral compass. And she really just wants to do right for her brother, and her brother does not want to be like with this group at all. Like it's kind of like John McClane, like wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, but he sticks it out, and he really tries to help her. Like, even he doesn't like her boyfriend either. And like Sam from Supernatural, I always forget his name. Jared Padalecki.
Padalecki.
Yeah, I never remember his last name.
Friday the 13th as well. A great survivor in that as well.
Yeah. I like how they called back to part 4 in that one, actually, because the guy was looking for his sister, right? I just don't like how they try to combine so much into one film. Like,
that's the problem. It's 4 movies in one, and I feel like it would have done better if they like spaced it out a little bit. But I don't know.
It feels rushed. Yeah.
It's not one of the worst remakes, especially House of Wax, as you mentioned. One of the actually is a really good remake. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people like dismiss it because it's that movie with Paris Hilton or whatever. But honestly, I thought it was a great remake. It also not just borrows from the original House of Waxes, but and all these other Wax movies that have come out back since then. But Tourist Trap, it borrows from Tourist Trap, and I love Tourist Trap, especially like you said with the whole melting them with wax, and what a death that would be. Because like in Tourist Trap, one of the most gruesome deaths. It's not gruesome; it's just slow, and he's just putting the plaster on her face and stuff, so she's suffocating under there. It's just what a way to die. It's like fucked up, man. Like it doesn't have to be violent to technically be very disturbing, So
no, but Paris Hilton has one of the best deaths in that one because he throws that pipe and it goes right through her face, and then he steps on her and pushes her all the way down. I was like, yeah. So if you don't like Paris Hilton, that's the movie for you because you get to watch her brutally die.
I remember seeing that in the theater, and the crowd was like, yeah.
Mine too.
But her attachment to it, I think a lot of people just kind of write it off, and I'm like, no, it's actually a really good movie. You should give it a shot.
It is. It's so underrated. It's one of my annual Halloween watches because I just love slashers in general, and it's hard to find good remakes because all these newer remakes about these like the big horror movie franchises, they're just not as good. I didn't like the Nightmare one. I hate the new Child's Play. I think that movie's like one of the worst movies. But I don't talk about the new Child's Play on my channel.
the Buddy movie, because that's how I refer to it. The Buddy movie.
The Buddy movie. Yeah, exactly. Corey says, what about Nettie from Jennifer's Body? Oh, yeah, that's a good one, too.
I was actually just about to say that. It was Needy. Amanda Seyfried plays her. Megan Fox, another one of the things that I feel like is written off because a lot of people, like I said with House of Wax, I was actually going to go into this. They write it off because Paris Hilton is it. This one gets written off a lot because that Megan Fox movie where like she's almost naked, but you never see anything. That sucked because unfortunately, that's how they marketed the movie. They're like, oh, look at Megan Fox swimming naked. Oh, look, she's seducing people. But yeah, if you watch that movie and that's all you're going in for is to try and see some Fox nipples, then yeah, you'd be disappointed, I guess, because they never really go that far with that. It's a different movie than what it was marketed as, though. I think she's great as a succubus. I love how they sacrifice her thinking she's a virgin. When I don't know why you would look at Megan Fox and like, yep, definitely a virgin. Definitely. I can take her word for it. Totally. The spell will go completely right. No, of course not, dude. What kind of idiot band is this? But yeah, Amanda Seyfried is Nettie or whatever her name was. She's great because I love how she gets kind of some of those powers at the end and she's in the mental hospital thing. But I think that Jennifer's Body is one of those movies that gets written off. It's actually really good. Like, I think people should check it out.
It does good at playing with the irony too. It has the girl preying on the guys, which subverts expectations for like the whole history of horror. Yeah. And it really plays with that too. I like that. Really quick, Kal-El Daly says New Child's Play is good. Come on, Carrie remake is good, and 03 Texas Chainsaw remake is great. I agree with 2 of those.
I love the actually Texas 03 remake. And Aaron, I want to shout out Aaron, played by Jennifer Beal or whatever.
Yeah.
She was great. She's Aaron. It's a new character. It's not Sally. The family also has a different name. So it's cool. I liked it. Was she the most memorable survivor? Probably not, but she was good. I don't think she stands out as much as Sally does. Yeah, because like that screaming at Sally does at the end is just like, holy shit, that's a memory to take back. Like you leave whatever you got done watching it on your TV, or if you saw it in the theater or whatever, you leave with that feeling of her just screaming and like, I got away, motherfuckers. Like, even if it is completely broke her, that's a different meal. So Erin's not quite as memorable, but she's still good. I think that Texas remake was great. Unfortunately, it spawned a whole thing of remakes, and not all the ones that followed were good.
Yeah. Platinum Dooms, yeah. But I didn't like the Carrie remake either, actually, because they totally changed the character of Carrie. Like in the first one, in the original, she's totally a victim, and she just lashes out, and her retaliation is almost accidental, and she has no control of her powers. But in the remake, she's fully aware of what she's doing. Like, she's a straight up murderer in that one. She's actually like seeking people out, like. So it kind of diminishes from the character, you know what I mean? Like, she's not as sympathetic, she's not as relatable.
Plus,
it didn't sit well with me.
She had that more innocent charm. Also, I can't remember the actress, but she was more like believable as like this. She's not supposed to be super. If you read the book, she's not supposed to be super hot by any means. She gets picked on for a lot of reasons, and like the original, I felt like captured that better. And the new one, it's like it's like, is this all she's all that? Like, just because you put some overalls and glasses on her doesn't mean she's not a hot woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Why are they making fun of her? Plug it up. And the one thing about the new one that really bothered me the most is that they're filming with their phone, and like nobody confiscates their phones. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah.
I didn't go to high school with phones. Like, soon as I graduated, then people, I guess, started getting cell phones in high school. But I just couldn't imagine, like, oh, what the fuck, man? That disturbed me more than the rest of the movie. Is that these girls are like filming her in the shower and nobody cares. Like, the teachers don't care. Like, no one gives a shit. Like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck?
There's no consequences. And I know what you mean. I remember passing notes to people like in class, like having to fold it up and having to secretly be like, and just kind of give it to them. Like, we actually did this thing. It was kind of funny because in my school, they put tennis balls on the bottom of the chairs so it would protect the floor. So what we did is we'd pop it off the chair. We'd put our note inside the little tennis ball, and then when the teacher turned her back, we would throw it across the room, and that's how we would pass the notes. Because no one would rat the other people out, right? Because they thought it was funny as hell.
Right?
But yeah, that's what I think about those remakes. Two of those, not great. Texas Chainsaw's okay, but like you said, that movie's responsible for all these other remakes that we've had for the last like 20 years.
I agree. And then the new Child's Play, it's like, oh, if you didn't, I don't even care that they called it Child's Play, right? If that's fine, because he's not using that anymore with the Chucky movie. He's not calling it Child's Play anymore. If you called it Child's Play and you named him Buddy, I would probably be a little more lenient on it. I'd be like, okay, would I be blown away by how great it is? Not really, because I've had so many movies where a kid befriends so-and-so. It befriends an alien. It befriends a robot. It befriends this. That's overbearingly controlling, that where it will kill anybody who gets close to this kid, like mean or just it feels like threatening to steal its friendship away. I've seen that done a million times in other movies. So it wasn't like super original. I don't know why your fucking doll needs to control your TV and your car and your other like fucking your table saw and all these other fucking random like lawnmowers and shit. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would they ever make a doll that could do that? But if you would have called it Buddy, because that's the worst part of the movie, that's the laziest writing. Hi, my name is, or like, and then he's like, I'm gonna name you Han Solo.
Yeah.
Did you say Chucky? Okay, I'm Chucky. Fuck you, movie. Like, it's just like,
the whole movie reminds me of that Halloween Simpsons episode with the killer Krusty doll. Looks like someone put this doll to evil.
Yep. There we go. And then he like starts giving him a sponge bath, and he goes to his Malibu Stacy home and kisses her head. Her head falls off. Like I said, if it was just called Child's Play and it was about Buddy and Mark Hamill voiced Buddy, I'd probably be less mad about it. But the fact that they really took this from Mancini, like he's making his movie or whatever done, and they're like fucking up because he's trying to have the show, and the show almost didn't come out because of this movie. Like, it was debatable. Like, it almost canceled it. Like, even Kyle, when Gory interviewed her, she was like, I don't know what to root for. If the show does really bad, they might cancel the show. If the movie does really good, they might cancel the show. I don't know what to root for. Like, people's livelihoods and their art was on the line because of this stupid fucking soulless movie. So even if it was shot well, even if I like Audrey Plaza, I do. She's great. In this movie, though, I don't give a fuck. Like, why did it have to exist?
Yeah, really. And they changed the whole character of Andy. Like, they not only age him up, but they turn him into a liar. He's an instigator. He's not that innocent kid like that you want to root for. It's like, oh my God, just kill this Andy. I hate this Andy so much. Like, he hates his friends. Like, he's not even a very good friend to his friends. You know what I mean? Like,
they're a better friend to him.
With, like, the head in the wrapping paper. That was so stupid. Why would you wrap up the head in wrapping paper? Like, why not just put it in a garbage bag if you want to be inconspicuous? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. I hate this movie so much. I could do a whole video about how much I hate this movie. Actually, Gory and I have plans to do like a Chucky chat for an episode in the future. So we'll talk about all the movies.
When we were talking about Andy earlier and being one of the best final survivors, we weren't talking about this one. This one is unlikable. It's just, Andy. Yeah, this Andy. Yeah, that's the good Andy. Not the one that did it for Tupac or whatever.
Yeah, that was weird too. Like, there's just so much. So if you liked it, I'm glad that you liked it. It's just not our thing.
There were some things that I would say that were, it has a okay kill here and there. There's some stuff that I would say was filmed visually good. The acting is like, I don't hate Audrey
I
Plaza,
like
like
Mark
I said,
Hamill.
he's great.
Yeah,
And Mark Hamill, he's great, but if he voiced Buddy and not Chucky, because he's not Charles Lee Ray.
no,
What you get is some ignorant AI, which I've seen in so many other fucking movies, horror movies, kids movies, so many other fucking movies where an AI is confused and doing the wrong things for the right reasons. I've seen that before. I don't need it. Like, this could have been a horror remake of fucking Short Circuit for all I fucking care. It's the same fucking thing. Johnny Five is
definitely.
alive. Okay, Buddy. Like I said, if you would have just called it Buddy, I would have said it's an average movie and I wouldn't have been mad at all. Even if you called it Child's Play, but just still had it be Buddy and not Chucky, Charles Lee Ray, I
Yeah,
probably would have been like, okay, fine. They're doing the Child's Play thing since he's dropped that anyways. They're remaking it and doing a completely different story. But when you tell me that this is Chucky just to fuck with the real Chucky, fuck you. Like, no, I don't need that. Like, I don't need this ruining what I got going. I want to see Chucky Child's Play, like the real Chucky. I want to see season 3. I want to see season 4, maybe. I want a new movie. I want,
yeah.
I want Mancini or whatever to figure it out on his own. And when he's done, he says he's done. Not because some fucking movie came out for a quick cash grab to like ruin his fucking franchise.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I like about Child's Play. It's because the whole thing, the continuity compared to most other horror franchises, the fact that it was written by the same guy this entire time
Yep.
is really outstanding, in my opinion. Like, 'cause this is
Mhm.
his vision, this is his baby. He's nursed it from the very beginning, and each movie, even though he has had some missteps along the way, like Seed of Chucky is not the best, but I would still watch Seed of Chucky any day over the remake.
Yeah.
Like,
And Fiona Dorff was talking about how she like saw on set of like the Chucky doll being lit on fire from the original movie, and she knew that it was her dad, and like she was a little kid and she saw this shit and like it kind of messed with her. So now she's in the series and she plays her dad, and her dad even says that she plays a better Charles Lee Ray than he ever did, which is funny. Like,
yeah,
but
yeah. I actually did an interview with Brett Dorff, and that was one of the things I asked him. And he said, yeah, he said he hated the fact that he had to dub over her dialogue because her performance was a lot darker than what he would have done it before. He was really impressed with how his daughter handled it.
exactly. And when Gory interviewed her, she laughed, and she laughs like fucking Chucky. Like it sounds like Chucky. She's obviously influenced. Plus, Kyle and Andy are back. The
Yeah,
whole series, and plus, Tiffany, who's it's to be 4 movies in and to introduce a character like Tiffany to where she's about as iconic as fucking Chucky herself. You
yeah,
know,
really.
to do that, to introduce a character like that, and to make her everybody like her just as much, if not, like she's all on the same par as
Yeah,
Chucky. Tiffany dolls are everywhere. Little Mike's little sister was Tiffany for Halloween when she was a little kid. Like that's just how it was, and that's so cool. And I just want to see his vision. Like, is everything he does perfect? No. See the Chucky. Not so great. Even like Cult of Chucky and a few things. Are there a few like the editing decisions that I'm super on board with? Not particularly, but I don't care because he's doing his vision. And even if he's going to strike out here and there, he's going to hit enough home runs to win the game. And I want to see him keep playing. I don't want a pitch hitter coming in for him just because he had one time up at bat that was bad. Whatever. I want to see
exactly.
it done by the right people. They always throw away in like when you go to a place you work and they're like, we're a family. You're like, no, this is where I work. I'm here to make a paycheck. But I will actually do believe when it comes to Chucky that the people involved are a bit of a family, seeing especially how his daughter is involved so now much. And Dorff and all those other people, they're involved. It is a family and it should be theirs. They should not be ruining it with some cheap cash grabs fucking remakes.
Yeah,
Rant
I love how
over,
Mancini
sorry.
started directing after a while too. Like he sat in the director's chair and he started doing his vision the way that he saw
Mhm.
it. So that
Exactly.
was pretty cool. Real quick, Kal-El says unpopular opinion. He hates the original Texas Chainsaw and thought Sally was terrible. Blasphemy. He also says, I like the remake of the movie. It tries to do things the exact same. I don't know. Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of remakes. They don't change anything. Like the Psycho remake, like a lot of them are just shot for shot. They're exactly the same. Like if you're gonna remake it, trim the fat. Try to change not change characters, but like characters that didn't have a big role before, maybe give them a little bit more to do, something like that. Like think out your scenarios a little bit more. Maybe things will play out a little differently. I don't know. Don't just do the same thing. Like, try to bring your own thing to it.
Well, that's the thing about the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like I said, they had Erin, and I think like she should be mentioned. She is a good final character. She's memorable as Sally, no, but there's other people in that movie that were more memorable, like in a sense, like what's his name, the sheriff, R. Lee, Ermy, the sheriff, the Leatherface's basically father character. Like he wasn't the cook. The cook was his own character in the original. Like I liked him. He especially he's hitting her with a broom. It was kind of funny, but it was like almost realistically he doesn't have the stomach for him. They even like told that. But then when they did with R. Lee, I thought that was great because he stole the fucking show. Like he was an insane cop. And that's like the last thing you want to be. Like, even in My Cousin Vinny, when Daniel's son, fucking Ralph Macchio, gets arrested for murder when he really just thought he was shoplifted a can of tuna or some shit. Like in My Cousin Vinny, you don't want to get pulled over or arrested in Texas because that shit's scary. Especially with Arlie Emery, is like fucking like they try to bribe him with the tickets. Like, you can have the tickets. He's like, nah, he smashes the bottle on him and he finds a little bit of weed and he like just fucks them over. And it's like, he's even scarier than Leatherface. Like, I fucking love that about Leatherface.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Leatherface in the original, like, too, like, he's panicking. He's looking out the window, and I fucking love it. Like, he's scared. He's, like, actually protecting his fucking town. But the same thing in the remake, but slightly different. He's way more of a vicious guard dog, but he's still protecting his house. Like, you came to his fucking house, he's gonna fuck you up. He's a lot more intimidating. It's, like, probably the most scary Leatherface. The only other one I could think in the series was Leatherface 3. That one was very fucking like no nonsense, scary motherfucker. But in like this one's like the remake, he's very terrifying. Like he's a big motherfucker with a chainsaw. He's gonna chase you around and chop you up. And he's a more vicious guard dog. But either way, every time Leatherface is kind of a guard dog. And he like takes, you know, the Next Generation one, I think he wore the woman mask a little too much in the movie. I like that he has it. Even in the original, he wears like a woman mask. He wears like other masks. He acts personalities of who he's wearing. And I love that about it. I love that's a very unique, crazy character. I think in New Generation, they just did too much of that. I wanted to see more of a vicious side eventually, and I never really got it. But in the new one,
they like go at him, he like sits down, he follows orders. He's not very intimidating in that one. Like, I have to agree with that. There's a little debate going on about Chucky now between Gory and Kal-El. She's on our side. He's all for the show. Hold on. I'm all for the Chucky show, but to be fair, Chucky remake was being worked on and getting off the ground years before Cursed Chucky. That may be true, but still, the fact that the studio went against, like, they went behind his back, basically.
He was never not working on Chucky. Even if you're going with Bride and Seed, he was working on it before that because he's always been working on Chucky. He's never retired. Always. And say what you will about Joss Whedon being an asshole, because I agree he probably is, but that's not really news to me. Most directors are. It'd be like if somebody was like, well, let's redo Buffy, and like he's like, I'm still here, I'm still alive, you know? It's like, wait till he says he's officially done with it. Even like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff, like Hooper is like, I'm done with it, you know? Like, go ahead. Even Raimi like knew that like eventually Evil Dead was gonna get remade, but him and like Bruce shut down the original plans for Evil Dead remake, and they decided they'll just do it themselves. They're like, because it's gonna happen, but why don't we have some control in it? We'll produce it ourselves. You know, we'll pick the director, and that way, if it happens the way we want. Which I am very much looking forward to Evil Dead Rising in the city. So, but once again, if they're still attached to it, don't steal it from them. You know, they're still working on it.
Yeah. What'd you think about the remake for Evil Dead? Did you like that one?
I did. I don't like it more than obviously my Ash Williams, but I think it's a cool remake, and I love how there was a tease that they were gonna like have a new Ash Williams, even kind of dressed like him a little bit, but then they're like, no, that's not where we're going with this. That guy's not Ash Williams. He doesn't have the same name, and he's not even the final character. So it's like, I love how they just did something different with it, because the same thing. If like you remade Alien today, I don't want an Ellen Ripley. Be honestly, if you were going to do it, I don't want you to do it. But if you're going to, don't put Ellen Ripley in there, because Sigourney Weaver is Ellen Ripley. Bruce Campbell is Ash. All right. There's just some people I don't want different versions of it, you know, like
Sally.
exactly. It's just exactly. I don't want someone else playing Sally in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like I don't need that. Like it didn't enhance that movie for me by at all. Like I was actually kind of I was teetering on it until like they introduced Sally, and then I'm like, okay, now this movie sucks. Like it is officially sucks. Like before that, it was like kind of laughing. It's like it's a decent slasher movie, not the best Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie because it doesn't have a family, and that's what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. It's not just Leatherface; it's a whole family. And there's more involved in that, and but I wasn't completely off board on it until they had Sally come out, and I was like, okay, yeah, fuck this movie for the most part.
Well, thank you for joining me. I just realized we're going over 2 hours now. I don't want to keep you for too long, but that's what
I'm out of
happens.
beer, so it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's true. Real quick, Gory says, yeah, Riot had to sell the rights after part one due to new buyers. Well, that's just typical Hollywood stuff, though. Like, it happens. It took so long for New Line to get the rights for Friday the 13th. Like, that's just Hollywood. That's just the way it goes. We're still debating about it. But
Like
thank you very much for joining me. Where can people reach you on social media in case they don't already know?
Horror Addicts is on Facebook. It's on Twitter. It's on Instagram. Just follow Horror Addicts. Go Horror Addicts TV on YouTube, and you will find us. Here, I post videos. I do reviews of movies. I do live reviews as well for more like newer movies. I have one that will be coming up for Prey real soon. And then also unboxings and other shit. I'm working on a movie right now, so I haven't put a whole lot of content on my channel. But once my movie's done, then I'll probably get back onto uploading channel more stuff. But like, yeah, find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram, wherever, pretty much everywhere.
Make sure you follow Glory too. She has a really good channel. They're doing that battle royale. You guys haven't been watching that? You know, it's awesome, and I think it's really exciting. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. My reviews are on Medium now. I think that's it. Oh, and obviously YouTube. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you do it for him too. And without further ado, do you have anything else to say before we sign off?
Yeah, check me out. I'm usually a guest star on Gory's fight nights on Sundays, where last time we did kaijus. Before that, we did survivors. I think we're doing mini monsters next Sunday. Like critters and gremlins and munchies and ghoulies and all that kind of shit. Like those are like the little battles of the little creatures. So that one should be fun. Check me out on Gorby Movie. Subscribe to her. She's amazing. She does a lot of great stuff. Also, it's my friend Brian Barnes' birthday today. So shout out to him. Oh, he does Mondo Peace Theater. He usually reviews like these old horror movies and like nudie cuties, basically drive-in stuff. It's pretty hilarious. Check him out on YouTube. And that's obviously cool. Give Mr. FLIXTER a big thumbs up and subscribe if for whatever reason you aren't already.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So without further ado, thank you for joining us, everyone. That was a great chat. That was a great little debate. I appreciate everyone who tuned in, and have a great night. I'll see you next week.
Thrill me.